Hello Redugas Nation, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It has been a while, I'm sorry, life kind of gets in the way sometimes, but today I am here with a bit of a different video for you guys. I have seen so many video essays that are massive passion projects that attempt to explain people's deep and fruitful love for, you know, books, concepts, niche internet lore. They've inspired me to pick up new things, simply based on someone else's, like, crazy, insane love. And as silly and as wacky as I've been the one other singular time on this channel, and as much as I feel that I have also expressed my love for Just Roll With It the one other singular time on this channel, I kind of feel that I too should be able to talk about the show and what I love about it on a serious and more dedicated note. And what a better time to do that than perhaps when said show turns 5 years old. So, ta-da! Here it is, I guess, my love letter to Just Roll With It. Celebrating the years of stories told and the hundreds of hours of pure creative drive that is just funneled into this silly podcast that I love so dearly. Now, I am obviously not the first person to do videos like this. There is actually a Doctor Who video essay that really heavily inspired this one. I wanted to take a punt at it, no matter if people have done this before or not. Simply because if I don't, I think I may actually erupt, shit myself, die, explode, maybe piss just a little bit. The head. No head? For those of you who do not know, I can't imagine why you don't, but if you do not, then welcome. Just Roll With It, or MWAH show as it is foreknown, is a tabletop RPG podcast run by... I went to call them hosts. I don't quite think they're hosts. For cast members, Bizly channel, Grizzly plays, Convergence, and Charlie Slimesicle. Together they run a multitude of campaigns and one-shots in various TTRPG systems. Its stories feel so deeply personal to me and many others. It's no secret that there's something touching about the nature of actual play podcasts. Being able to watch characters develop over hundreds of hours and multiple years is something you can only really find in this genre. The writing grows as the characters change, not only with the actors themselves, but also with the audience. It isn't necessarily unique to Just Roll With It in any way. I'm sure many actual play podcasts have this very same feature, but for me, Just Roll With It is the one that kind of made the most impact. It's stuck. There's something almost indescribable about being able to grow up with the media that defines the growth itself. For me, I would have started watching the show midst of its freshman campaign, The Fated. Now, almost 4 years later, 2 years into a degree, out of home and into the workforce, this show is still with me. And while the characters and stories have changed, each new world and new set of protagonists seems to correspond to some part of my life that I'm struggling with. Maybe it's chance, maybe one tends to dictate the other, but all of that is to say that it feels like something pretty special's been discovered. But I am in fact getting off topic and I'm getting mushy, I am sorry. What is Just Roll With It, apart from a podcast? Just Roll With It, if all goes well, will have been running for almost 5 years now, starting in the August of 2018. Within that time, they've run 6 campaigns, all with varying length and different completion statuses. Originally starting back in 2018 with the Fated campaign, almost 5 years later, we followed 2 stories. The story of the Riptide Pirates and of the Prime Defenders. I'll get into these later, and talk about them in excessive detail, actually. It's my video. I can do what I like. I've been keeping this inside for years. But it is as simple as that, really. It's just another D&D podcast. But it is what is within that D&D podcast that I think makes it so special. What sets it apart for me and many others is its storytelling and approachability. I've seen a decent few D&D podcasts in my time. Again, crazy autism brain. It's a genre that is rapidly rising in popularity. Critical Role's break into mainstream media and Stranger Things, bringing D&D back into the forefront of pop culture had helped keep sort of the genre alive. Just Roll With It, for me, was a perfect jumping off point. A great start to fiction and storytelling podcasts alike, where Critical Role had hundreds of hours of dense world building and was already 10 years deep by the time I started it. Starting with no knowledge of the genre felt awfully overwhelming. I've actually since watched a good chunk of Critical Role and loved it, obviously. It is the D&D podcast for a reason. At the time, Just Roll With It had that perfect balance of consumable world building and episodes that I could consume in one sitting. or maybe like 15 episodes in a sitting, whatever. It was the start of a long and treacherous D&D journey for me. The cast aren't professional voice actors or TikTok famous DMs, but the stories they tell and the characters they create are just as valuable. As for Just Roll With It, after a brief bit of data collection, this very much only accounts for the fandom space. I tried to survey as many people as possible. There are thousands of fans who did not take my survey. I'm coming for you. Take my survey. It seems like Just Roll With It got a particularly good start, containing cast that had ties to insanely popular pre-existing fandoms. From the data that I collected, a large influx of watchers came from having guests on, like Rambu, Jay Schlatt, Wilbur Soot, and also having main cast member Charlie Slamsicle being pretty prevalent in the MCYT and gaming community, helped kind of build a bridge across into starting up a very solid Just Roll With It fan base. That's not to say that JRWI is good because of that connecting bridge, it's simply just an open door for new fans to kind of walk through. People watched, they fell in love, and never really stopped. I think there's always something to be said about being able to broadcast your own story. Everyone's thought of starting a D&D podcast, and if you haven't, you're literally lying to yourself. But to be able to broadcast like hours and hours of D&D, which can be such a personal and moving game, and being able to sit and watch as people love or hate, think about or headcanon your own personal character, that takes a lot. It's simply a group of people wanting to tell stories. And as much as the show has shifted and changed over the years, that at its core has remained the same. I want to take a brief sidebar moment to talk about the cast. The cast currently consists of 4 main cast members, a parade of guests, and some fantastic people behind the scenes. The 2 wonderful editors, Tyson and Icarus, do fantastic jobs at keeping the story in one piece. Pacing and sound design is obviously just as vital to the show as any RP or story moments. After all, story beats cannot be beats if there is no rhythm. That was the cringiest thing I've ever said in my whole life. Jesus Christ. The show also has some fantastic recurring artists. There are quite a few, but repeated thumbnail artists and concept artists consist of the fantastic... Hold on. Off the top of my head, let's see how we go. Fantastic Satin, Ren, Nada, J-Saucin, Hollow, Shan, Riven, Glory, Lumi, Grassfur. I think that's most of them. And as for the main cast themselves, each have given some fantastic performances over the duration of the show. I will talk about the cast more in different sections of this video, as it's kind of hard to show you what I mean without evidence, and this video will in fact be 3 hours of evidence. I will split this video down into 6 sections, each briefly talking about one of the many campaigns and what I think kind of makes it just roll with it. Talking about plot, themes, characters, world, and music, featuring some super sick interviews throughout. That's pretty cool. That's pretty sick. I'm normal about this, actually. I will, however, pop a warning here. Foot in the ground, toes in the dirt. A warning, this video will contain spoilers for actually the entirety of Just Roll With It. Like front to back, everything, spoilers for all of the entire show. All 5 years of the show. And I will also be talking very briefly about the Fated and Convergence campaigns. Timestamps will be in the description for anyone who wants to skip over any of that, or if there's any bits that you don't want to be particularly spoiled from. If I remember, I will put a list of episode spoilers somewhere on the screen when I start talking about a certain section, so you can just mute, whatever, etc. I do also want to say any discussion about Fated and Convergence will be talked about tastefully. Please keep the same kind of respect in any discussions surrounding this video, comments, Twitter, etc, etc. Let's talk about Riptide, shall we? Alright, Riptide. Riptide is the current main campaign available over on YouTube, Spotify, whatever the fuck a Podbean is. I think it's actually available everywhere. You can probably download it from SoundCloud if you really tried. It's been going for just over 2 years now, and is definitive of everything kind of Just Roll With It has grown to be. It's a feel-good story through and through, even when it gets pretty intense. It follows a group of 3 novice pirates as they travel through the watery world of Mana to uncover their past and partake in wars of wit with antagonist Niklaus Hendrix. This is set in D&D 5e, in a homebrew world which consists mainly of water, an occasional bit of land, but mostly more water. Our main cast consists of Gillian, Jay, and Chip, who are played by Charlie Slamsicle, Convergence, and Bizly respectively. respectively, and also DM'd by the wonderful Grizzly Plays. Say hello, Grizzly.
Hey! What's up?
Dude,
I feel welcome.
I'm glad. Or that can change depending. I don't quite know what the vibe is yet.
Don't say that.
I'm crazy. I'm crazy. Do not for a second think I'm normal, because I'm not. This is the best place to start. Just roll with it if you haven't already. And there's also so much to talk about, so I will split this into smaller sections, kind of to stay organized and not go too off the rails. There's no promises though. Again, my video, I can talk about what I want. Riptide, at its heart, is a story about freedom. Freedom from duty, freedom from destiny, and freedom from your past. But it's kind of more than that too. It's a story about exploration, about friendship and learning to find yourself in a world that doesn't want self-discovery. It's about escaping entrapment and learning that companionship really genuinely is the strongest fighting force for justice. This is literally the power of friendship, the campaign. Grizzly, I know what you are. Freedom, though, I feel is the most important, at least to me. In a story and world that feels so predetermined, destiny, generational trauma, Joker society stares, all fighting forces literally against the Riptide. Each character has their own forces holding them back, something keeping them static in a world that's so based upon movement. Jay, whose Navy upbringing and paternal issues hold her back from moving on, not only from her childhood but also from her sister's death. Her father, being a high-ranking Navy officer, causes deep down inner turmoil, struggling to align her morals and wants.
You keep saying that people took me away from you. No one took me away from you, Dad. You haven't had me for a long time.
I love Jay's journey because it can be seen physically. Her being able to break free is represented through the visual of birds throughout the whole campaign. I mean, her name's literally Jay, a reference, obviously no-brainer, dumb, to jaybirds, which traditionally are supposed to represent guidance and change ahead. It seems stupid to point out then Jay's role throughout the campaign, almost a leading head. She is a symbol of change, especially for Chip. She is the beginning of Chip's pirate crew, the start of that new journey, literally. Jay's home is also called Featherbrook, another, like, not so subtle nod. She also gets the eventual gift of literally wings, her being the navigator of the Riptide Pirates, a task birds are known for. Whether this is all, like, eventual foreshadowing of some crazy Icarus metaphor, or just a slow story of literally learning to spread your wings, we'll get to know. But Jay's journey is far from over. Birds traditionally are a symbol of freedom, hope, and new beginnings. And, well, need I remind you what the main theme of the campaign is? Jay's character is obviously something we've seen so much growth for, because we've been able to watch her over, well, at this point, 2 years. I know back on, like, Joelda Island, there was a period where you were saying you were, like, debating cutting Jay out of the story and, like, her leaving and going off to the Navy. Was that something that you as a player were, like, actually considering, and, like, would you have taken that route and made up a different character, etc., or?
Yep. I had a whole character kind of concept going on there at that point. It's kind of a Jay would do this, but also I'm really uncertain with how I play Jay and, you know, how I handle this character, that I'm not sure if I want to kind of continue on with them. It was also kind of me kind of fighting with myself as well as Jay fighting with herself, I guess, about what the right choice is. Obviously it didn't happen, but I was totally and just fully prepared to do it. You know, who knows where the hell we'd be now if that was what I did. It's a fun little thought exercise, I guess.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, what if Jay left? Where would the other two be?
Yeah, I was about to say...
Chip would have been on his own.
I think they would have been dead. I'm going to be so real with you. They probably would have been dead.
We have the shanty coming out soon. I'm pretty sure that's a line in the shanty that I sing. Is like, without me, you two would be fucking dead.
The cold hard truth, man.
I wouldn't be surprised.
In that same respect then, like, I know episode 53, the infamous episode 53, you also said you were prepared to, like, lose Jay. Was that another, like, option there for you then? Or was it something you were trying not to, a path you were trying not to go down?
With D&D, and especially when we're, like, running a show like this, it's more about kind of doing justice to the character and what they would do. And, you know, if that is a bad thing, or if that's an action that takes them out of the story completely, then that is what it is. So I was ready to lose her again. Yeah, I was ready to. She'd probably come back eventually, but I was ready to play another character again there. I really wasn't sure, what was going to go on from there. Because, like, that whole kind of, like, monologue and ranting about, like, oh, yeah, this is my secret. Okay, are you happy now, Chip? She was ready, basically, to just, like, never be accepted by these people again. Which didn't happen, thankfully. Makes life a little bit easier. Obviously, like, the choices don't come up a ton where you could get written out of the story.
Yeah.
But when they do, if I feel like it's what my character would do in the moment, or if it's like, and it tells, as long as it tells a good story, if it's what my character would do in the moment and it told an awful story, like it was really stupid, like if my character would just jump off a cliff for no reason in the moment, like what does that add? There's no why did that happen?
It'd be a really funny bit though, like
it would be so funny, and also my character would be dead.
Yeah.
But super funny bit. Everybody's laughing.
Think about the bit. Do it for the bit, and that's what matters. Chip's story with freedom is much more subtle than the other two, I kind of find, because we haven't quite gotten to see it all yet. Chip is the most connected to the world by far, in the sense that his story got to start before the rest. He is working towards a goal that seems unreachable, both compelled with addiction, spirit, and magically, to search for his long-lost pirate crew and father figure, who were lost in a crash years earlier. Chip is the one who kind of brings the pirates together, a true force of unity despite his shortfallings. His fight for freedom is one that he isn't necessarily fighting for himself yet, but more so a path that others are guiding him on. Chip struggles with maintaining a serious tone, but also finding his footing, forcing himself into piracy almost just to relive his childhood. Chip's childness at heart is both a shortcoming and a strength. Chip's relationship with forcefully adopted child/brother figure, Ollie, really doesn't shy away from pointing out Chip's shortcomings. His ignorant youth and refusal to grow up really shifts over time to finally understanding that title and responsibility come hand in hand.
Maybe just like one more adventure with Ollie?
One more?
Just one more. I mean,
you promised we're gonna bring him back?
Of course. I don't know. I like having him around. If it means anything, we are sorry. We did our best. We could have brought him back sooner. But we didn't. We were selfish. Ollie's an awesome kid, and we liked having him around.
Delivering many speeches to his crew, uniting cities previously left to ruin by his own ignorance, or even just apologizing. Chip is a character that defines kind of found family, with him literally going out and finding a family himself from scratch. Chip's character revolves strongly around the characters he's surrounded by, and yet the people around him would be nowhere without him. Chip's character is very tied to the world. There was a period where he wanted to leave the crew entirely. Was that a choice you, as a player, were actually considering? Is there an alternate timeline where Chip goes on a solo arc to find Arlen?
I want to say yes, but in reality, no. No, I just had an arc planned for Chip where he would be at his lowest before he could start changing and becoming the man that I wanted him to be. He's always been in my mind the story of a boy becoming a man. Because, the story has followed him since he was a young boy. And so I really wanted to tell that coming of age kind of story and showing the maturity and the lack of in the character. So I don't think I ever really considered giving him a solo arc or anything like that. It's all just been to serve the purpose of where I want him to end up.
Now we get to Gillian Tidestrider, champion of the undersea, hero of the deep, singer-songwriter of Hole in Your Heart by Gillian and the Tidestriders, the one. I refuse to do the rest. I cannot. There's too many of them. There's too many. Gil is the character ever, actually. He is my blobbo, my scrunkly wonkly, my little stinky boy. I sound so chronically online, I need to touch grass. Charlie often explains his characters something along the lines of bit characters, and then you recontextualize the bit and suddenly they get tragic. And I literally cannot think of a better way to describe Gillian Tidestrider. Gil is a character from the undersea, a world literally under the sea, but very separate from the oversea in tradition and culture. Gillian is the appointed chosen one, born to fulfill a vague and senseless destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny's nuts.
The freedom he seeks is forced, being banished from his home for violence.
You found me in the ocean because I was banished from the undersea, and during negotiations with the Navy, I attacked an officer.
Oh shit.
What?
He's forced to seek a different path rather than just falling into it. He is selfless to a fault, and his journey is about learning selfishness. I love how parallel our main trio's journeys are. Gil learning selfishness while Chip learns selflessness. Gil learning that destiny isn't everything.
So I don't know. When I say it is my destiny, I don't know what my destiny is.
While Chip and Jay learn that maybe purpose is something worth believing in.
I didn't really think destiny was a thing before I knew you. You know, everything I ever had in life just kind of seemed like a shitty hand. I really think it was you that made me feel like we were right where we were supposed to be.
Gil has some spine-chilling speeches, and coming from a character who is taught to fight and not speak, him being able to voice himself with such a strength is monumental. This character makes me crazy, I'm sorry. All of this character feels so earned and rewarding, with the character changing as the world does and vice versa. Scenes where Jay gets to defy her father, taking vital steps to separate herself from a path laid by her father. A fuck you to both family pressure and expectations, where Gillian gets to, after 80 episodes, finally confront the elders.
Because my last sin is that I hate you. I hate you.
Which, in my interpretation, is a metaphor for the pressures kind of self. Or when Chip gets to stand in front of a crowd of people and rally them into a pirate crew. These things feel so rewarding, so inspiring, and pulled off in such a way that can only come from a TTRPG. Telling a story about freedom in a game that naturally inspires nothing but freedom really elevates the story in a way that can't be scripted. Following the theme of freedom, the story moves in the same kind of waves. Each arc, at least throughout what I would kind of call the first act of Riptide, episodes 1 through 49, being a set of almost short stories about liberation. The pirates themselves going from island to island, freeing people, powerful or not. I do use freeing in a loose sense. They do set a couple of things on fire, but not important, before they have the strength to free themselves. The story shifts around episode 50, I would say, and that freedom begins to be about the pirates themselves, rather than just their influence. What was it kind of like for you having to step up and learn to DM for the main campaign?
I mean, there's a story there, right? We had to kickstart a reboot for Just Roll With It and start over. And so we all did those one-shot campaigns. And after doing the one-shots for Riptide, I was excited to try, but also really nervous. Before doing that one shot, I was watching stuff like Critical Role pretty often. And I had like this view of this is a professional storyteller, professional actress. This is how like they do it. It's not the only way that I can be done. Like obviously now I've watched a lot of shows and gotten more inspiration, but I had that vision in my mind of like, I've played with some really great DMs and I've watched some really great DMs. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the same thing at the quality that I want. I rolled up a big document on World Anvil of that one shot, like all the details that you could ever want when you're prepping for a session, descriptions, all kinds of names. If someone asked me an NPC name, I was ready. Except for that one, Wheezy F Baby, that was improv. I still remember that. Yeah, I prepared way too much. It took like way too long. I think it took like a week. Because I didn't go first whenever we were doing the recording sessions. We did the recordings in like 1 month. I didn't go first. So I had like a week or 2 weeks to write that. Took the entire amount of time. And whenever we did that, there was no world beyond that scope. It was very, like these are the things that exist. There's no lore written. I have nothing like that. I just took inspirations from things that I was enjoying at the time, like Hollow Knight and One Piece. That's why it was Pirates and then it went into the Abyss. And running it was really fun, but like, afterwards, I realized that I get too anxious, like internally, and I told the boys I don't want to do this ever again. But if nobody else wanted to DM the public main campaign, because we were thinking about running too, Charlie has a very intense schedule, and Connie just wasn't ready to run anything at the time. So if I didn't run it, like, we wouldn't have a show. So I started doing it, and it was super hard, mostly because I didn't want to like DM. I wanted to stay a player, and I didn't have that skill developed. It was really tough because I was trying to like come up with a whole campaign, a whole story in like 2 weeks after that one shot. You know, whenever we did the first session 0 that ended up being session 1, whenever we recorded that escape from Canella, that wasn't supposed to be public. It was just supposed to be practice. And then they liked it so much that they did public. But even after that, there was nothing, I had nothing planned. I had like nothing written really, no ideas. And coming up with those ideas and trying to be ready, because I think we were recording like twice a week. Back then we were going really hard, like way too hard. Trying to prep all that stuff was really stressful and overwhelming. Because like there was a lot of expectations, both from our audience that was starting to grow faster, and then from, you know, the friends that I play with. I didn't want people to be bored. I didn't want them to be bored while playing. You know, I didn't want my inexperience to show. And that kind of like pressure is not good for one person. It still isn't. Like, it's still pretty hard to do this, especially because I still have like the same struggles. I get better at it over time, obviously, as you watch the show from session 1 to whatever we're on 103. But back then it was tough because I just like, I wasn't good at it. The whole like behind the scenes stuff.
Kind of in that sense then, has Riptide grown in the way that you wanted it to? Hoping that you're, you know, obviously proud of the 2 years it's been going, you know?
I'm happy with everything that we've done up to this point. I know I look back and there's a lot of stuff that I wish I did differently. And there's still a lot of stuff going forward that I'm trying to prep for that I don't really know how to run yet. So I think honestly at this it's hard to know how much it's grown. Like, it's hard to think about or conceptualize. I know it has. Like, obviously, it's improved. A lot of people enjoy the show. But I think since I'm still in it, like I'm still driving the train of the show, it's hard for me to look back and see how much railway we've covered, I guess. You know, or how many carts are on the train, or if it's going faster and stuff.
I get it.
Weird allegory.
Yeah.
But I think once we finish and the pressure is gone, and I'm not, like, dungeon mastering, because, you know, we plan to hand it to Charlie.
Yeah.
I know I'll be able to look at the campaign and be really proud about it. Especially because I think it's only going to keep improving with how I both write, you know, the world and the characters and what's included. And even mechanically, it's probably going to improve. Just the more that I learn and get help, the better the episodes will hopefully be. It's not even the game that's, like, hard. It's just writing a world is such an undertaking that I was not prepared for. And especially, like, trying to run a story and satisfy 3 people that play characters that are, you know, wildly different and come from different places. It's tough, but I mean, I think once we get there, it'll be worth it, and it'll be good.
The world does feel like very alive, though, as in like it feels 3-dimensional. It feels built up. So, at least from, you know, in my regard.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Can I also
I'm glad it does.
Inquire, since we're on the topic of like how far through the story are we?
Hold on, I have a document I can tell you.
Exact percentage.
I have a loose. Oh yeah, maybe not that, but I do have a timeline of story beats. And I started writing it when they were going to 0 after the carnival arc. And we've actually done 2 of them out of. Okay, so there's about 24 to 25 main story beats left, and we've done 2.
Oh, okay.
Which is returning to 0 and entering the Black Sea.
So it's not going to finish anytime soon, is what I'm hearing. It's got quite a ways to go.
Not really. Yeah. So it might end in a year. It might end in 2. Who knows?
Out of sheer curiosity, what parts of Riptide, if any, are you like most proudest of?
Natural 20 kiss.
Natural.
All
dude,
me. That was me.
Went down in history, that one.
I did that.
You did that. That was.
I pulled the strings of RNG for that to happen. One of my favorite things in watching media is good villains, right?
Yeah.
Not saying I have good villains, but I really like Niklaus because it was an accident to make him a good villain.
Oh?
I started playing a character, and I think he's a good villain because they get pretty stressed out whenever he's around.
He's pretty sick.
And I, like, you know, they, like, whenever he's on screen in front of the characters, they get, you know, tense up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not sure about him. He's very enigmatic. And I think that is one of the, like, you know, ingredients for a good villain. But it was an accident because I just wrote and played a character I thought was interesting just to play. I didn't even know what his motives was when he came up. I had like a very vague idea. I think that they've really developed over time. But whenever I first started playing them, they were super simple, super basic. But he was just like enamoring to play, I guess. And whenever the first moment where Gillian just like attacked him and then completely L'd, like took a massive L from it in the beginning of the show, from then point on, I was like, there's something here and it's awesome. Like doing the favor and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just proud that happened despite being like really new at DMing. I think I'm like super hard on everything that I do, so it can be hard to like in the moment be like, yeah, that was awesome. But that did happen recently for the episode where they saved Gillian. 98?
Yeah,
99?
yeah. 98? I think 98. Yeah.
Whenever we did that session, I felt like super calm. So I'm really proud of the episode just because whenever I finished the recording, I was like, damn, that was crazy. Like that hit. That was impactful. And it's so hard to feel that normally. I think it's mostly just because they cared so much in character and out of, like it showed on their face out of character. And when you are a DM, that's what you want to pull out of your players. You want to like create characters, create a scenario where they completely forget about reality and what's happening in the story is real for them. And that's just a recent example that I was like super proud of that it happened.
The overarching story takes a shift to the center stage, moving away from the almost episodic or short story nature that the show had been traveling on up to that point. While still flowing in arcs, your story's starting and stopping is more blurred, and themes, characters, and islands kind of start to overlap. This is both the story starting to enter that classic hero's journey at conflict, the challenges and rebirth of the story and characters. Choices start to be a bit more meaningful and characters threatening. The story itself takes a break away from the cyclical nature of life, of the same story being told from generation to generation. Grizzly uses scene and plot parallels flawlessly to depict the growth and world of characters. Never once does it feel lazy. Whenever our characters return to a location that they've been before, it always feels fitting to where the characters are currently in their journey. My favourite example is the island of Canella, or the town of Zero, opening scene of the whole campaign, with our pirates running across these giant red roofs, fighting to liberate a small town. Now, 100 episodes later, our pirates return, running across rooftops, but this time with these beautiful drawings of sprawling landscapes, a city full of life, and a direct repercussion of the actions of our pirates. They get to return mature with a new understanding. The reoccurrence of Chip lighting a match, a symbol of their unity, or Chip and Gil's fights in episodes 15 and I think 84 respectively.
And I am telling you this not to hurt you, but to let you know that you have damaged my honor and my pride, and I need it restored, Chip.
What is all this for?
I betrayed your honor. Therefore, we have to fight. To restore it.
Depicting how their trust has blossomed over time, dialogue parallels even.
Your choice is your own, Jay, and sincerely, I hope it was worth it.
And he drops.
I just hope the secret was worth it.
I think my lovely Moody Patootie, Ethan the Arness, said something about legacy, and that feels really fitting. A good term to use. Oh my god, the world building of Mana is genuinely, like, inspiring. The world is so in-depth and so rich, where every part of it feels like it has grown organically over time. Each island so individual and separate from one another, and yet they all work so perfectly together as a world. Every action has its cause and effect. Being able to go back to the starting town of Zero and seeing everything the Riptide pirates have caused truly speaks wonders to the love breathed into this world. We get to watch over these 100 or so episodes as not only the characters learn to free themselves, but also all of Mana. Each mystery is so perfectly clouded, and yet never feels lost exploring it. It all feels like it has an answer if only you were to search hard enough. Like Gillian's prophecy feel tangible and discoverable. A little side part word on Grizzly's DMing too, and despite what it may sound like, I'm not a bootlicker. I'm just 4 years of built up like admiration and rage inside of me, and this is my one chance to get it out. I gotta get it out, girly pop. Like, I'm serious. Grizzly's DMing. Hi, hello. Genuinely, his passion and love for every character he writes is infectious, but each character just feels so alive. From bit characters like a Mandarin, the Orange Seller, to vital characters to the plot like Ollie, all feel like they have so much life behind them. And all the wonderful artists who bring them to life too just do an amazing job. The detail at which he describes his world, every corner genuinely so vivid and particularly placed. The entirety of Zero from top to bottom is designed with a balance between realistic city and fun and whimsical island that's impossible not to fall in love with. Even stuff like Noctis Island, I was genuinely on the edge of my seat. Can I inquire a little bit about like the writing process for Riptide?
No, you can't.
Oh, fuck, well, guess. It's Jova. I'm done.
The writing process.
Yes, the writing process.
Up to Edison Kingdom, I wrote everything by myself, and it was too much on me. I guess I'm just fragile, and all of that work was tearing me apart from the inside. I got help with Grace after that. She's a fantastic writer and obviously went to school for it, whereas I did not. She knows more of what she's doing, so I did some like consultation sessions with her about the main themes. Like I sent what I had, which wasn't a ton. You know, the most I had fleshed out at that point by the time we got to Edison Kingdom was the fact that Niklaus was this overarching figure that had a hand in a bunch of different places. Grace wanted to talk about the actual history and geography. I was like, what is that? And then like flora and fauna. I had no idea those were real words until this document. And I couldn't even answer it. I was like, I don't know anything about fauna. I talked about like religions and gods. That's how the two goddesses,
Aster and Lunadea,
got written. They didn't have names at this point. I was like, I think I want there to be a god of the sun and a god. I just want two. Because I don't want like gods to be a big part of the world. I think the characters and their rise to power is much more interesting. But I had to have gods because Gillian's a paladin and he has an oath, and I wanted to know where the prophecy came from. She asked about like things like economy, language, races, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's a
Obviously,
loaded
there's
one.
D&D races. That was, I know, and I don't even think we figured that out really. It's like super like, you know, because most of D&D has like copper, silver, gold. I think I only use gold in this world because like pirates, I don't want to deal with all the micromanaging. So like
Housing Crisis on like 0 or something like that.
Yeah, that would be insane, right? The Riptide pirates fight back against capitalism.
Dude, crazy story.
Basically, we talked about stuff like, you know, the themes of the story, who are the heroes, who are the villains. From there, she'd help me flesh out details that I didn't have time to do. Like she helped me flesh out Allport. I could write, for example, the Coral Port and be like, this is what it is. And then she would like put things in there. Like, okay, here's like the shops. Here's some of the people. And she'd help name things. And that's what we kind of did for a while up until the Carnival arc. Because that was done in Druweek. When we were working together, we figured out not all of the world building and not all of the lore, but we at least got a solid like timeline. This is a certain thing that we're going to work towards, like a beat, you know, a twist or whatever. And then after that, this is what the story is going to change into. You know, these are the antagonists that are going to come up. These are the how they're going to relate to the player characters, and then we like figured out, you know, how we can help set a scene or a scenario that will allow for the player characters to not only grow but fulfill their personal goals. So we figured all that stuff out, and then after the arc, I started writing mostly by myself again. The last thing that I got help with was some shops and stuff from Canella. And the writing process is usually, if we're recording weekly, ideally, I go in and I just try to do the basic session notes prepping, which is like way too long to explain. I think I have what's important all written down, like to continue running the story. But I don't have everything that helps with running the campaign as a whole. Like, for example, I have the names and the shapes and stuff of like the different locations in the Black Sea, but I don't have all of them written out to where I could describe one of them to you in great detail. And I don't know what the plot is for all of those islands because I don't even know if they're going to go there. So I have basic ideas. Like, for example, in 103, Gillian gets that vision of two tabaxis talking, and one of them is talking about they're in this fight against the K-Knight. And we know that K-Knight are Rufus's race, dog people. So you can kind of put that together that somewhere in a place that has a pyramid, there's this conflict going on. And I know that, and I knew enough of that to explain it in this vision and give them kind of like, okay, if you want a direction that interests you, you can go there. and it also gives you a goal. Like this person's goal before they died was to save it, whatever it is, probably the tree in the context, right? So I have enough written to write stuff like that out or improv it, but sometimes those things are also just either made up in the session or written like the week before the session.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends.
I do
If that
have
makes sense.
a small personal question for about specifically that scene off the books.
Uh-huh.
There's a certain tabaxi that showed up with a British accent. Is it him? Yes or no?
The one that was in the royal robes, like me personally, I'd like to describe him in a similar way and play him similarly. I don't know if I'm actually gonna name him like Taxi or Saxy or whatever. I don't know if I'm gonna do that yet.
Yep.
But
I had my suspicions is all.
I want the spirit of
Yeah.
that character to go into that NPC if that NPC comes up. I thought like I did it for Casper too, right? His name is Mr. Cass in the story, and he's not the same character, but he could be in a way. Like it could make sense for him to be there. But for this Tabaxi being Taxi, the one that's, you know, some figure of importance inside this pyramid, I don't know if this character would be him to the point where you can connect and be like, okay, he got here somehow. I think this was just kind of like the natural progression of that character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it'll be like that direct about it, but
No, that's enough. Of
I
an
do
answer
intend
for
to
me.
play him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I had my
I do.
suspicions, and I was like, I've got this opportunity, man. I gotta at least ask. Is there a particular part of the world of Mana or Riptide that was the hardest for you to write?
All of it.
All of it? Okay. The whole thing.
All of it is hard.
Yeah.
I was just DMing Charlie earlier, and I was like, man, why is this hard, bro?
Dude.
Cause he writes so fast and stuff.
Because
he's just
Condi
so
was
creative.
talking about like the suckening and like your recording sessions, bruh.
Yeah,
like
we
8
recorded pretty
hours?
much every day with one break day.
Oh my god.
Yeah, every day.
What? That's insane.
It's hard. So it's hard on everyone, but when you do a recording week like that, it's especially hard on the dungeon master
Yeah.
because they have to prep every session.
I can imagine.
And when I did it for the Just Roll with the week number 2, where we did the carnival arc, I wanted to use the book so I didn't have to prep so much.
Yeah, well,
the book actually was really hard to run.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like threw it away and was like, I'm not running this anymore because it doesn't feel like our game.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like someone else's. And they didn't want to like play to the game's or to the book's plot devices and mechanics and stuff. I was like, this is like too hard, dude. I don't know how to include all this stuff. I ended up doing that week pretty much improvised, and it was not any less stressful. For some reason, while I know it's stressful on the DMs, Charlie just so good at writing and brainstorming and thinking of ideas and making them work, and he's passionate about mechanics. I'm not passionate about mechanics. I think the one thing that I would be passionate about in the D&D sphere is making characters and playing them, which is why I like being a player. But because he has all the passions of a dungeon master, he's just so efficient with it. And I was DMing him earlier, and I was like, man, this is hard. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to come up with ideas. Like, I'm better at it now, but like for this next session we're going into, I still don't exactly know the mechanics of the encounters yet. And that's in a few days. So
listen,
it's I don't know, it's tough.
You're
What did you ask
DM,
again?
you can
What did
just
you
start
ask?
lying. I was gonna say what part was the hardest, and you just said everything. So like, I guess it technically counts.
Yeah, well, it's all pretty hard. No, I have an answer. Hold on. Let me think. You know what's hard to run is all of the. Never mind.
No, come on,
I
listen,
was
man.
gonna
You
say all
started.
the Felipe content.
Okay.
That's because I was way too attached to Felipe and didn't want him to
They're
go.
like Felipe
But
episodes.
he needed to go. I really wanted the conflict, you know, of their actions for using the deck of many things to really be stressful, and it just got way too stressful, and I stepped back after that. I never wanted an NPC that I like playing that much ever again.
You can't get too attached.
Oh, you know, you're asking me what stuff I have planned, like world building wise. I don't have everything, but I do know what happened to him.
Will it come up in
I
story?
know that for a fact.
Is it gonna come up in session
Oh
sometime?
yeah.
Best day ever.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. I hope he became like some like omnipotent king or something like that, and he's doing great. He's got a wife and kids.
He pulled a really bad card. Man, I love the deck of many things.
The issues
The reason
it caused.
we put that in there. Yeah, I read somewhere that if you can't DM like a party that has the deck of many things, then you're not ready to be like a pro dungeon master. Something like that.
So
Something silly like
put it
that.
in
It's
there
not
as
true.
like a-
You can be a pro.
As like a bet.
Oh, I put it in there to test myself.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I was like, this will be crazy. I need to see that I can run this. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that Gillian arc,
Oh my God.
I didn't write that. The hardest things to run in Riptide are when the players go into like buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't really have like a map or an interior visualization for it. So it's hard to describe what they're seeing and what they're doing. Locations, when they're just moving around.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything.
Everything. The whole, all of it. All of it. There's so much to talk about, so I should probably just like move on to music. Oh boy, the music of Riptide. Story so long and expansive, having a soundtrack that fits is pretty vital. The atmosphere is shifting regularly between these large, expansive seas and worlds so infinite. Tracks like The Drifting Village and Oblivion's Reign of the Septims encompassing that wild, kind of expansive landscape. Smaller villages and islands, each with their own distinct feeling. Riptide also has its own official soundtrack. Guys. Composed by the wonderful Nathan Hanover, who also did work for Dialtown and Generation Loss. Its sweeping title theme, The Riptide Pirates, which captures the scope of the campaign. While also tuning into the silly of the characters, with these plinky plonks and wind sections that add so much personality, with a dramatic rhythm background that makes it feel very like Pirates of the Caribbean. Its character tracks are perfect, with songs like Gillian's It's My Destiny or Jay's The Navy's Daughter telling the overarching story of the characters. It's so easy to picture these massive dramatic scenes of discovery to these tracks. Chips the Bastard Pirate is a personal favourite. It's so fun and silly, and the guitar riffs really encompass the character itself. Hello, Ridgegas Nation. We managed to bully Nathan Hanover into coming and having a bit of a chat. However, he wasn't comfortable doing a audio or video interview, however did agree to write out some answers for the questions that I had asked. Here is a one-person play of a Nathan Hanover interview about the Just Roll With It soundtracks. You're a one-man band when it comes to music. How long have you been composing, especially professionally? And bonus, how did you get involved with the show? I've always been interested in music as a child and tried my hand at composing when I was around 12 or 13 years old, but officially started around 2015-2016. I class the first 5 years as portfolio building, so while I've been composing since 2015, I feel my talent as a composer has only flourished in the last 3 years. So I've been spending the last several years working on projects to build up my name and sound as a composer. As for working on Just Roll With It, it came as a stroke of luck late last year. Slimesicle made a tweet asking for musicians and composers to post their music for him to listen to, as he was looking for someone to work on his upcoming horror podcast. A friend of mine sent me the link, and for fun I replied to the tweet with a few of my tracks. I didn't think much of it, as I'd been grinding for work for months, so automatically felt this was a failed opportunity. That was until Slimesicle sent me a Twitter DM, commenting how much he enjoyed my music. Do you write most of your stuff digitally? What's the typical writing process for a song or OST of this kind? I do write most of my music digitally, but I have training in piano, guitar, bass, and choral work, and use those skills to my abilities when writing, but do frequently hire guitarists and vocalists for my work, more so on Riptide. I use a mixture of software to create my pieces, from FL Studio as my main program, Pro Tools to apply professional room reverbs that aren't compatible with FL Studio, Audacity from time to time for any last-minute tweaks, and most recently Cubase 12 for tempo correction when scoring to video, such as cutscenes or film. As for my writing process, I like to start with the skeleton score of the fundamentals on a piano. This includes the chord progression, bass line, and rhythms, along with a melody and or counter-melody, and then from here I begin to orchestrate the piece, transforming it from the basic piano to whatever genre the piece is to be written in, from orchestral to jazz, etc., etc. How long does a project like this usually take? I feel this is more subjective to the project. For example, Generation Lost took about 2 to 3 months. Blood in the Bayou around 2 months. Riptide soundtrack is currently 8 months in and may be indefinite with Volume 2 in the works. And Dialtown Phone Dating Sim was just under 2 whole years. What was the writing experience like for Riptide, where you're writing for something literally 100 episodes long? Did you write with scenes in mind in particular, or just from pure vibes alone? Luckily for me, Riptide had 90 plus episodes of content that the team underscored with video game music on Spotify via different mood playlists. So for me, the plan was to create 1 to 2 pieces for each mood, along with 3 versions of character themes, a normal theme, a battle theme, and a mood theme, which is essentially just sad music versions, along with a few additional tracks where we seemed fit. The plan wasn't to replace the video game music, but to expand upon it in its own soundtrack the team can use alongside the Spotify playlist music. Due to this, I had a lot of content to take ideas from. Later down the line, we do plan to swap the scoring to specific scenes if there's enough of a backlog in the recording schedules, but so far the plan is to continue scoring the mood pieces and eventually villain themes, with maybe a few other character themes along the way, till we get to that point. As far as I'm aware, the music chosen for the show is in one of 2 ways. The listen along during the episodes, or also the editors working their magic. So yeah, how did you get involved in the show?
I started with the show back in 2020, December, and I don't even know if I should say it or not, but I mean, you know, before everything happened, I actually started working with Convergence, not Riptide.
So I'm assuming that was like editing down the live streams then to the
Yeah, that's pretty much how it started. Was I was editing the live streams that they were putting out, and eventually it just became, you know, they recorded ahead of time and then I would edit it down into what you see nowadays. I guess to answer the other part now, since that's a good segue, the reason I even fell into this position was because me and Grizzly, we were both going to college online. And I just so coincidentally happened to notice that he was the same guy that I was watching from, you know, Grizzly Plays, his channel.
Hold on, so you actually found him through YouTube and then were going to the same school?
Yes.
That's... What a crazy crossover.
Yeah, I mean, he'd probably blush, but I helped him with his homework.
A certain Icarus mentioned that he did your homework. True or false?
Why is he putting me on blast like this? Why is he trying to make me look bad?
Dude, I didn't bring it up.
He's fired!
It was him. It wasn't me. I was like, how did you get involved in the show? And he's like, well, I think, and I quote, what I said is, Grizzly's not going to like this one, but... And then I think he told me that he was doing your homework. So, just know you're getting thrown under the bus.
Oh, he didn't... Wait, hold on. I don't think he did my homework, but I'm pretty sure I'd often ask for his notes. I did do homework on stream one time. Like, for this class.
Dude,
these
Twitch
classes.
chat helping you out.
Be a good student, everyone. Don't be like me.
So what has your time been like so far? Do you keep up with the community? I see.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started off like I didn't really know where I wanted to be, and I kind of still don't, as far as my social media presence in regards to that, but I was always kind of like abrasive to that. I felt like I was trying to I was taking advantage of the community if I made posts like I do now. Obviously that's evolved, and I've moved past that, and I love to terrorize everybody whenever I can.
You and a certain other editor have that in common.
Yes. We did have a little incident recently where I did become Tizen 2.0 for a bit.
Hold on. So you pronounce it Tizen. I have been pronouncing it Tizen. And he says Tizen.
Yeah, I know. It's supposed to be Tizen.
I'm a Tizen believer as well. I also find that obviously editing brings so much to like the episodes themselves. I'm assuming you guys greatly control like the pacing of the show, or in your case, like the pacing of Riptide. How do you kind of decide which parts to keep and which parts to cut, especially like during combat? Because I know that can be quite lengthy.
Since the show is, 100 episodes in, we just recently had the 100 episode special, like maybe 4 weeks ago. What I like to do is, if there's like too much repetition of rules or whatever, since we're this far in, the audience doesn't necessarily need that much like hand holding when it comes to the rules. So if I feel like, if it's not necessary to keep in as far as, technicalities, I take it out and I try to make it mesh as well as possible.
So as in like, I'm assuming like cutting out like maybe not a whole round, but like a decent chunk of turns and combat and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, if I was to take out a whole round, I would have my head cut off for that. That would be a huge continuity issue. If it doesn't, fit, or if it's just like if it's a sidebar kind of deal, which I've gotten very good at, understanding, because obviously working on the episodes for 2.5 years, I kind of understand how the boys work off camera and on.
I think I don't know if this is still canon, but like your like and I quote Riptide OC or whatever is like still living under the ship, I think. Still chilling down there.
Oh, Oh man, I wasn't even thinking about it. I'm happy you brought it up though. Yes, Torum, he is on the ship. No matter what happens, he is there.
He's down there.
He's surviving.
He's down there.
And actually, I'll give you a little
God knows
insight.
how.
I'll give you a little insight on that as well. I talked with Grizzly about this behind the scenes, and Earl knows he's there.
How closely do you obviously work with Grizz, the DM, with the editing of the episodes?
I obviously work very close with him, just like I would believe Tyson works with Bizly on Prime Defenders, you know? Yeah. I edit down the bulk of it, and then Grizzly will watch it through and then give his revisions. And forgive me for saying this as a revelation to everybody, but anybody who watched the streams, you were basically the guinea pigs.
Do you actually have a favorite episode that you've edited at all? Or a favorite moment? Or something you're particularly proud of?
Obviously, I gotta go to the Jerwee Week episodes, 71, 72, somewhere in the 70s. It was the second Jerwee Week, and it was the one where the boys had the whole setup with the ship. When it comes to Jerwee Week, for the last two times that they've done it, I always try to open it up with something special, and the second one, I opened the first Jerwee Week episode up with the Smash Bros intro. Yeah, I think I spent from a range of 9 to 12 hours on that intro, and it was only maybe 30 seconds.
12 hours? Paid off. It's by far the sickest intro ever. So then what is actually your editing process like for a show like this? Do you have a specific style of editing, and how long does it actually take you to edit an episode?
If you include everything, including downloading files, rendering, pre-prep, all of that, it can take anywhere from 30 to 40, sometimes even 50 hours to get an episode done. As far as editing style, I mean, it's changed as the show has changed, as we've progressed. So it kind of evolved from, this typical, JRWI purple thematic thing to we're just going to edit it in the style of Jerwee Week all the time.
So then without the uploading, etc., how long do you actually spend hand on computer editing?
Last I checked, 24 to 28 hours of the whole process.
Big relief then when we went bi-weekly. So the burnout would have been awful.
Oh god, yeah. If we ever go back to weekly, I'm going to have to sit there and do my entire process within 4 days worth of time.
Especially for Riptide, music-wise, I kind of know how music is chosen for Prime Defenders and for Apotheosis, but never quite for Riptide. So do you have a pool of songs that you pull from, or is it a collaboration between you and Grizz about what music you chuck in, especially with the soundtrack and everything coming out?
Yeah, it's a whole mix, it's a smorgasbord of everything. Obviously, we can't do what Prime Defenders does, where Tyson likes to go off and use the copyrighted music. You can't do that on YouTube.
Yes.
No, we take from video game music a lot. The soundtrack it came out recently, like you said, and I mean it has good songs in there from from our man. Nah, Grizzly sat there and he made a whole thing on Spotify, playlists where we take from certain emotions of songs, and it really helps with the workflow of doing music, because I gotta make an admittance, I'm not a music guy. I can feel a scene, right? And I can understand the emotion that's trying to be portrayed, and I can fit a song in appropriately. It takes me longer to do the music because that's not my field. I forgot to mention there's this little track that the boys like to record for me. We call it the listen along. I basically take that track and I lay it down so that way I know if ever I have a question about the music, I can refer back to it. This has been your local JRWI Riptide editor, Tizen 2.0, coming at you live.
Riptide, I would argue, feels the most cinematic out of all of the campaigns. I would like to have a quick aside to talk about my favorite episode of each campaign, mainly for a break in the serious talk, also just as an excuse for me to go insane, something for years of pent-up rage. This episode, Just Roll With It Riptide, episode 53, may be my favorite episode of Just Roll With It ever. Dare I say it? A bold claim, I know. The anticipation of 53, not fair and well. The first Jerwee Week ever. Sessions being run in person for the first time. The pictures of everyone in costume. Most anticipated episode for me ever. This episode was something that you could only really make in these specific circumstances. And this is where I believe Jay becomes such a real and fleshed out character. Condi, Mr. Convergence, He shines. He shines like a golden little star in this episode, man. Literally, I was sobbing there's, I think, photo evidence. Oh my god, I don't know. This episode is like the first real threat. The first real choice of Riptide, where she has to choose between her family and her friends. Nothing has ever, oh my god, nothing has ever hurt more than listening to that roll. I need a moment. Where Condi said that he was prepared to lose Jay. He may have been. I was not prepared to lose Jay. This episode was the accumulation of where the story shifts, where the characters become very, very real. The music, the words, oh my god, tell me what you want so that I can fight for it. Gillian goes down with a smile. I am Jay Ferrin of the Riptide Pirates. Truly, the one-liners here were ravenous. Dare I say it? Pussy popping. Obviously, from my perspective, like, the first Just Roll With It week was an insane, like, amalgamation of, you know, years worth of waiting for stuff like that. What was it like in person, finally being able to, like, you know, play D&D in person?
It was cool. I think up to that point, we had said so much that in person is, like, the way of the future for Just Roll With It, but, I mean, like, in reality, I don't know if it'll ever be able to happen just because of our own individual, like, tastes and where we live and all that stuff. I mean, I'm in Canada. I have to immigrate if we want that to happen. It's a whole thing. But, like, just everything about being in person is just so much better. Like, it feels like you can kind of, like, bounce off of each other easier. It's easier to not, like, interrupt each other or talk over each other because you can actually see the people. There's no, like, Discord delay. It's all just, like, in front of you. And, like, everything about it. I mean, the first Just Roll With It week is the one where I fucking cried my eyes out as Jay. So, I mean, if that's anything about how much more in character and stuff you can get when you're in person, it is just a wonderful experience. Mind, that wasn't the first time we tried to do in person.
Wait, what?
Back in the Faded days, we all met up at PAX. So it was me, Weedy, Charlie, Grizzly, Bizly, and we tried to, like, set up a thing in Airbnb there at PAX West, and it just would not work. It was we tried to have cameras on for it, but Weedy also wanted to remain faceless, so it was just a whole thing where we were trying, but it just never happened. I think we did, like, a little one-off just for ourselves because it was fun, and that was, like, a great time. You know, it's one of those things.
You mentioned earlier Just Roll With It week. I am curious as to how, obviously, like, when you guys did the first Just Roll With It week, from, like, outsider point of view, that was insane. But, like, from your guys' point of view, what was it like finally being able to play in person, like, for the first time?
The first one?
Yeah, the first one.
Oh. We tried playing in person before that, like, one time, really long ago, and it was, like, it lasted for, like, 10 minutes because we had, like, an audio error, but it felt like magic because you're doing the character voices in front of everyone. You're kind of sitting in this moody lighting, and it's just crazy. I'd never done that before. And Jerweek was the first time we did it, like, all the way through, like, multiple sessions. I would say it was awesome if it would have been way better. It's awesome looking back on it, but it would have been way better if the actual circumstances of that week weren't so hellish because it was hot. It didn't have AC. When I watch back those Prime Defender episodes, I obviously look like I'm dying because it's so hot in there, and we're also so tired because we're not pros at scheduling and stuff. So we end up going till like 2 a.m. They had charm because there was, like, this raw passion behind just playing in person together, and that's why it's, like, really hard to recreate that episode 53 of Riptide. Because I think that those kind of episodes can only happen that genuinely, like, to where you're watching, like, damn, they're in it. It's like it feels real. I think that only happens in person. It's really hard to get that out when we're doing it over Discord. We definitely get moments like that in the second inning, just hyping it up again. Riptide really kind of feels like a performance in some ways. It's not, but it kind of, there's moments where you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely a comedy podcast or a D&D podcast. But when we're playing the second inning, it doesn't feel like that. It really felt like people playing
Just
a TTRPG.
Yeah.
That's always how we want it to feel when we play. So playing in person, first Just Roll With It week, the last one we just did, It's always the best.
Some of my absolute favorite episodes come from those Just Roll With It weeks. 53, Apothe 11, like, I don't know, man. They go absolutely insane. They're so so good.
I keep forgetting it was in person.
It was. Yeah. But like, aside from all that, like, it was still a banger episode. The discussions that were had between Peter and Rumi and Thanatos, etc. Just 10 out of 10.
Again, like, whenever we're in person, getting into character feels way more immersive, like way more intense.
And obviously you've been doing this thing for like, at this point, 5 years, which, by the way, congratulations. That's a crazy amount of time.
Kind of crazy, yeah.
You've come from a very different place from obviously where you started. What's it been like learning to actually like role play like on the fly and doing it in front of like an audience? Because I think you were like very new to TTRPGs when you started.
Yeah, so I mean, going into Just Roll With It, I had done like a couple of home games with some college buddies at most. And those games were the kind of things you'd expect from like a college game. So it was very different in vibe, especially since we were trying to be a show. It is something that has been very fun, and you talk to people and you like have plans going into it. So you think about all day, you're like, oh, it's time for this episode. I'm really excited. There's a scene I really want to play out with my character because they're feeling this type of way or whatever. Basically what I'm getting at is like RPing on the fly and stuff has mostly just become kind of like a purely habitual thing where I am the character now. Nothing else matters. Nothing is real. I'm not real.
I get it.
But Jay is.
I completely
or
understand.
Vincent is.
Obviously, you guys have been like doing this for, well, at this point, 5 years. So congratulations. And you've come, very different place from when you guys started. How has it been learning to RP sort of professionally on camera? Especially because I'm pretty sure you guys were all very new to it at the beginning.
Whenever you talk to Bebo, I'm sure he's gonna mention he hated D&D.
Really?
Like, he was not a role player. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because he's like, one of the best actors now that I know. I don't know that I would say that I'm a professional at all. Like, this is, I guess, our profession, but I don't feel professional at all. Probably because, at least me personally, I have like very clearly a lot to learn still when it comes to doing something like this on a public stage. It's been enjoyable for sure. But it's been hard. I'm really glad that we have something like this that has been going on for so long, where we can look back and be like, look at how terrible we were at it. And now when I listen to episodes, it's much more passable. Sometimes when I listen, I'm like, damn, we did that? Like, that happened on our little call that we had, a few weeks ago. I think it's cool to have that growth, even though growing both as a person and as a performer in front of a lot of eyes can be both.
It's a lot of
hard.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. You've been doing this thing for 5 whole years now. Congratulations. You've come a very long way from where you started. How has it been like learning to roleplay professionally, especially because everyone was obviously very new to TTRPGs back when you guys started?
So when we started, I was kind of a loser, and I thought playing D&D was lame, and I realized now that me then was just kind of lame. I used to get drunk. This is probably not what you want to hear. I used to play Mountain, which was just me being mean, and I would drink. I'd get a big, tall stein that my dad got in Germany, and I'd fill it up with Yingling traditional lager, and I'd just drink that shit away. Eventually, I went into whiskey. Yeah, I would just get really drunk, and I would do it, and it would make it easier for me because I didn't feel as awkward. And over time, I got into it. It was really just talking with Grizzly about the characters, where we would bond over the characters and like the stories we were telling, and I think that's what really made it easier. And then over time, I don't know, settled into it. I got better at it, got more interest in voice acting, started to grow up and open my mind to more experiences and think, you know what, maybe it's not lame, maybe it's actually really fun. And I definitely love telling stories, and I'm more in tune with that kind of thing, and I can also get into a character and play a character much better.
Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. PD took some warming up for me. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but because it was something different. Both in world, but also literally in like mechanics. Using different systems, different aspects of characters can be explored. It opens up doors for different themes to come up naturally. Taking place in the Mutants and Masterminds system, This is a story of superheroes, of kids growing up with no one to put faith in but themselves, and of heroes desperately clinging to morality. We follow 3 high schoolers. William, played by Charlie, Coda by Grizzly, and Vincent by Condi, all new age superheroes training to become the new, Avengers? Called the Prime Force. The Avengers of Prime. A story like this really gives the cast, at least kind of in my opinion, a chance to thrive in different systems, but also by playing different types of characters. Where you aren't a predefined, fantasy archetype, it's kind of a chance to try something new. Speaking about characters, I will warn you, talking about the theming of Prime Defenders, I can go a little bit crazy. I can go a lot crazy. Whether the theme is intended or not, it's what I find significant in the story, and what I think really propels it. Prime Defenders, for all this discussion about morality, right and wrongs, black and white, to me really is a story about growing up. I want to kind of go back to something I said earlier, which I know is a lot. I do say a lot, about how the nature of actual play podcasts means that the listeners grow alongside the story. And not to spell it out for anyone, but what feeds one kind of feeds the other, you know? Growing up, having to learn independence is where I personally see this story shine. Each of our characters struggles with growing up in their own way, especially in a world that demands so much maturity. When we start PD, William and Dakota are both teenagers. Vincent, I believe, is 19 to 20, but unadapted to the world of Prime. They're told they have to take a stand and learn to be the next Avengers, the next Prime Force, and are thrust out into this world like that. Young and immature, one who is desperate to be a hero, one who wants nothing but, and the one who frankly couldn't really give a shit. All 3 of them have to learn over time that the black and white mentality that comes with youth, that everything is wrong or right, that people are either villains or heroes, can't be applied to the real world. I think how our different characters struggle with this is really compelling. Dakota is a character who is desperate to be a hero. He has looked up to the Prime Force for most of his life and is determined to make the world a better place. He, most of all, is obsessed with this idea of being a hero, this idea of heroes and villains. His belief that you are either morally good or morally bad is constantly challenged through the story, but he often struggles to grasp it. Moral ambiguity is something he doesn't see, and it's the source of most of his conflicts. Dakota starts our story completely star-studded by the world of superheroes, and his confidence and moral high ground propel him through the beginning of the story. In early season 1, he's faced with the character of Wavelength, who in Dakota's eyes is evil. But over the course of the 2-season runtime, we learn about what drives his delinquent activities, about the equivalent death of his wife and desire to protect his son. Ash Winters, I miss you deeply and dearly. The character of Wavelength is designed to challenge Dakota.
I know you care. I can hear it. I know what it sounds like to care and be scared of losing someone that you care about. I know what that sounds like.
Said you were gonna save him.
And I still am! But I'm not gonna do what you did and hurt people to get there!
And it's been months. So where is he?
I've never done this for myself. I don't care about ego. I don't care if I live or die. Being a hero shouldn't give you any privileges. That's what it means to live selflessly. But all you do, it's not for Ash. Because if it was, you wouldn't do it this way and you'd be better.
The morally grey versus the morally ignorant. Dakota, to me, represents most that disparity to be worth something that comes with youth. That feeling of invincibility and strength, like the world has existed only for you. He is confident and never seems to falter. And we see a peek of his hard home life in late season 2, and Dakota's strength is recontextualized, no longer from a place of ignorance, but from a place of necessity. He becomes more of a hero than he could ever be fighting a villain. Dakota is a character that, is obviously he's headstrong, he's very sure of his beliefs. What would you say challenges him the most as a character? Morally and physically.
Mentally, and this might sound vague, but I think the hardest things for Dakota are the things that are hard to make sense of. Mm-hmm. In the story, William has done some really dark things recently.
Yeah.
And there have been some consequences that are very tragic. And it's those sort of things, not necessarily what happened. Because you know, what happened is easy to understand. Why it happened and who did it is hard for Dakota to understand. And it was much harder, like, way back in the beginning of the story when he had much more of a black and white view on the world and on people. He can make sense of the fact that Doug lied, right? That makes sense. He just can't. It's hard for him to understand why someone would, like a friend, would betray for any reason. It's hard for him to make sense of why he doesn't have his parents and why people die in collateral damage with heroes trying to save other people. Those sort of questions are the hardest challenges for Dakota. Those moral areas continuously come up, like the moral gray areas and just the things that don't make sense but happen, they keep coming up. Put it simply, complexity.
Yeah.
And layering, like layered things. Everything is layered, and it's really tough for Dakota to understand all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, I mean, he lost his superpowers, and then he ate a chaos demon. So I don't.
Yeah, maybe nothing challenges him physically.
So mentally, Dakota feels this intense drive and obligation to save and help people, no matter what. Recently, he's come around to realizing that it can't just be good people he saves, and it's very challenging to care or to not be biased on who you save, especially when those people do like really terrible things. I don't know how he's going to handle it when he comes to a person he wants to save, but there's just no way for him to save them the way that they are. Like, I don't know how he's going to handle that. I think that'll be the hardest conflict for him mentally to deal with, the hardest challenge, when
like Ash comes around.
Physically he can, where he can save someone physically, but mentally he can't. Physically, I have it written here that he can't resist a fight, which is kind of ironic. He really loves violence, I guess.
Is that the thing you find most challenging to play about him as well? Then is that complexity and that trying to struggling to understand like the depth or the moral to and fro's.
Inter-party conflict is what I find the most challenging too, to play as Dakota. So like what we're having now, I guess I wouldn't call it inter-party conflict, but arguing is really tough for me to play as any character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no different with Dakota.
William Wisp, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of the hero spectrum, as in he kind of isn't one. He tends to understand moral grayness a little too much, and is the exact opposite of Dakota in like every sense of the world. Where Dakota's headstrong and confident, William is thoughtful and calculated. William's relationship with the whole growing up thing relates most to the classic angsty teen archetype. He's angry at a world that he doesn't want to be a part of, forced into the superhero system that he sees issues within. William is stubborn to the point where he's almost unable to see the good in people. Growth over the story almost goes two ways. His relationship with superheroes deteriorates. He revolts against the world around him, joining the ranks of WAH only begrudgingly. William takes independence into his own hands, over time becoming more adult in the sense that he makes choices independently, almost too independently. William wants to do the right thing, but just doesn't see the world around him as just or fair. He sees himself in a world that doesn't deserve much good, and slowly, over 2 seasons, is learning to see that Prime does deserve heroes. He's very vocal about Dakota being the hero the world needs.
And I know you more than well enough to know nothing will stop you, Dakota. But I sure as hell will slow you down. I don't want to hurt you anymore, Dakota. This thing isn't yours to carry, okay?
Too fucking bad. I'm not gonna be a hero without you.
Disregarding himself in the meantime as a force of change in the world, whether that change be intentional or not. Vincent is kind of the, really don't want to use the word quirky, kind of the oddball out of the 3, where he is driven most by his friends rather than the world around him. He is literally from a different world and is thrust into the world of Prime without any information. Him having to learn to adapt to an unfamiliar world with only the assistance of 2 teens who are also struggling with the weight of heroism on their shoulders is a great reason for his immaturity, despite him being the eldest of the group. I find it interesting how PD are in their late teens, 17 to 20, and act so much younger on a maturity level. The world itself propels that level of childishness, where invincibility is attainable and being singled out as special means that you literally are. Vincent himself comes from a world based upon a D&D system in which death is very rare, and so in this sense his immaturity makes sense and is only reinforced by the rest of PD around him, who struggle to take their role in the world seriously. Vincent, as mentioned, is propelled by his friends, and so having William so far on the side of anti-hero and Dakota being the exact opposite causes a silent kind of conflict for Vincent, where the morals of his homeworld and Prime are very different. And having to decide where he himself stands on these issues of heroes and villains, on killing versus being killed, land very heavy on his shoulders. Vincent, over time, grows into confidence, starting to make choices for himself rather than those around him, eventually being the most mature out of the three. Vincent, Prime Defenders, what would you say, like, challenges him?
My boy.
Yeah, your boy. Most in the world of Prime Defenders. Like, what is his, like, biggest conflict? At least, cause from my reading of the character, it's a lot of internal stuff, like obviously him battling with world to world, finding his place in everything.
God, that's a good question.
Sorry, I'm coming out with the crazy ones.
You're gonna know how little I have prepared for Vincent.
You should have done the homework, man. Like,
for Vincent, it is mostly internal. It has always kind of been internal. I think his biggest kind of conflict is finding out, like, you know, he's, for basically as long as he's been on this world and been a hero, he's been relying on these other people for either like their powers or just to, like, you know, get him through whatever troubles arise, right? But like his main conflict, I guess, is trying to find basically who he is in this world and finding out like what kind of hero he is. The bigger story that I want to tell with him eventually is just, you know, him coming into his own and being, you know, his own thing, his own hero, whatever the hell he wants to be, because who knows if he'll be a hero still at the end of this after the last few episodes. He's just a little guy in a weird world, man.
Sometimes that's all it takes. A little guy in a weird world.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all just little guys?
Aren't we all, though?
In this big weird world? Well, in that case, then, like, what was your biggest inspiration behind Vincent?
So Vincent, very fun. My biggest inspiration didn't have any like character inspiration for like who he was. I just wanted to be dumb. I just wanted to like have a character that I could do my funny bits with, because I don't feel like I can do that with Jay all the time. He's my funny bit guy. Bizly comes to me if he wants something stupid to happen.
The microwave, the 30-minute microwave. Yeah,
exactly. The microwave. Yeah. Because I'll do it. I'll find something stupid to do and I'll do it easily.
So he really is just a silly guy.
He is just a silly guy in a weird world.
Hell yeah.
Biggest inspiration though, his entire kind of thing was basically inspired by Final Fantasy XIV. There's a trailer for Shadowbringers where the guy is just like fighting a fucking angel and he is just swapping classes like every 10 seconds. I'm like, that's cool as hell. I want to be able to do that in this campaign. Hey, wouldn't it be really funny where instead of being in this world naturally, I was like reverse isekai'd here, and it would just be really cool and funny. And they're like, yeah, that would be really cool and funny, man. I was like, thanks, guys. I always try to find a way to kind of flip, I guess, the world and prospect on its head a little bit. Like with Riptide, I went into Jay and I was like, okay, I want to be a Navy soldier, you know, kind of navigating, being a pirate in some way. With the Suckening, my character is a brand new vampire. Literally, day one gets changed, and that's episode 0. Okay,
really?
That's a little spoiler for you guys at home.
I guess in that case, like, you as a player can navigate the world as the character is as well. So it's obviously, you know, new to the world. Etc.
I don't need to have previous knowledge of the world. Yeah, exactly. I'm going in just as blind as my character.
You've actually just cracked the code. Like, you know, that's how you play D&D.
That's it.
Prime Defenders being, at this point in the story at least, an abandoned youth in a world that doesn't quite need them yet. They have learned to fight on their own and for their own. For me, I could find myself in this, watching this over the last 3 years, going obviously from high school to uni, moving out, getting a job, learning how to grow up, etc, etc. It's a story that much of the audience can relate to, as on a general note, most viewers are in their teens. Even for the older viewers though, growing up, and with all that comes with it, it's a story that everyone can kind of resonate with. What better way to tell it than through superheroes with an organized color palette? I'm gonna be honest with you. PD makes me very melancholic. Dakota constantly battling to unlearn what he thought was a very true binary way of thinking, William struggling to validate himself with or without powers, and Vincent desperately trying to find his footing in a world that wasn't made for him. Each of these characters learn and are more so forced to grow up in their own ways. PD is something very different from what Just Roll With It had been up until this point. Based in a very comic book-esque world, its lore being more kind of wishy-washy, just because of the nature of superheroes. It doesn't retract from kind of the depths of the story at all. It doesn't necessarily follow the arcs that Riptide does, instead working in seasons. The first season is our hero trying to fit into their box of being the prime defenders, in most cases trying to rebel, taking action into their own hands in that classic way that teenagers do. And while season 2 of the show takes a little bit of a darker tone, it never loses that immaturity. The feeling of being just some light-hearted bits between friends makes it easy to forget the severity of the story. It's how the plot structure itself mirrors the story that really makes my brain explode, go brr. To me, it feels very like video game. Like, you unlock side quests and parts of the map as you go that you can use to your advantage. It's less structured plot and more kind of free roam. But also, Fortnite is canon, so there's really only so much credit that I can give you, man. It's very evident, and Bizly has been vocal about this, about how comics and hero movies have greatly inspired Prime Defenders. And while I haven't read, like, any comics ever, that's a lie, I've read one comic. I'm sorry, the only comic I've read was a My Chemical Romance comic. To be fair, it fucked. I have seen almost like every Marvel movie ever, unfortunately, and you can tell how inspired the world is. Not in the plagiarism sense, but in there are challenges and issues prominent in the superhero world that are so evident in big blockbusters that we get to explore on a small and detailed level within this world. And not in a depressing the economy is crashing kind of way, but rather in a how does this affect the kids? How do corporations and heroes interact? How do you organize uncontrollable power kind of way? Prime is a world that once had heroes, lost them, and then found them again. And while heroism is structured, it isn't perfect. We can see characters thrust into heroism that the system doesn't take seriously or doesn't take care of. And we look at how they are forced to live. And while I cannot talk about every character, there is one in particular. You guessed it, Mark Wavelength Winters. He's a character that exists to show the flaws in the system that are unavoidable. He's a father to Ash, a young hero who joins PD for a short while. Their story is one of superpowers causing more hardship than good, with Mark losing his wife because of Ash. He is renowned for being a fan favorite. His actions, while not excused, are explained. He's an anti-hero, but a father first, and inspires questions about the monetization of powers in the world of Prime. Are they controlled? Should they be? But at what point is protection an excuse for crime? We get to explore heroism on a ground level, where our heroes are called upon but don't care, or worse, aren't called upon at all. As William tries desperately to fight against a system he willingly became a part of, or as the three of them struggle to navigate the crossroads of morality the world itself has presented for them. I want to go back earlier too, to when I spoke briefly about the new TTRPG system allowing for exploration of new themes and ideas. For a brief period, PD returned to Vincent's home world, which just so happened to be a traditional fantasy world, and naturally the game system shifted too. It went to D&D 5e for a brief period, and it was really interesting to see how the characters fit together so differently. As powers shifted, so did the way the characters acted. Not in a out-of-character way at all, more so kind of what they were drawn to. William becomes less timid and more outgoing. Vincent too more confident, and it's very evident how different a story, not just the superhero part, but a story of three teenagers trying to navigate an unsure world, how different it would have been in a system designed to accept characters as legend, rather than a system where everybody is already kind of a legend.
Having to jump in straight away and run a Patreon campaign in a brand new system can't have been easy. How have you found running PD and learning to game master as you go? How was your writing and planning style changed over the course of Prime Defenders, and what significance did the great break of PD have?
So we started Riptide, and we started PD at about the same time. And I had no expectation of actually running something. I think when we started the new run of Just Roll With It, the new era, I kind of thought Charlie was going to run the main one, and Grizzly would run the secondary one, and I could just live in my little superhero world in my head forever. but when we did it, I mean, I gave it my all. I did my best. The biggest challenge for me has absolutely been in mechanics, as I don't like them. I like the story. I like, setting the scene. I like making the characters. I like making the world. I hate the Mutants and Mastermind system. I don't hate it. It's just not. It's not D&D, right? I'm not much of a game guy. I like the role play aspect. I like the story aspect, and so being the game master, I've definitely felt inadequate in that department. But over the course of Prime Defenders, I mean, I've been all over the place, right? First season absolutely did not go how I planned at all. I mean, I thought Wavelength was going to be Overlord, and I was going to have that whole twist, and then we just didn't. We had somebody else who was going to play Wavelength's kid. They were unable to do it, and so I hit up Yako, and I was like, yo, do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, sure, fuck it. But I don't think I communicated properly, and then he was just on it forever. But it was cool, because it was like, I feel like I made something awesome completely by fucking accident, and I don't know how it happened. In season 2, I wanted to shift into something a little bit better. I wanted season 2 to be a stronger go of it, and I also, like, towards the beginning, I really wanted it to be like one-off, almost like you're watching a cartoon kind of thing, where it's very concise. Each episode is self-contained, so that I can explore different ideas, because I felt very trapped in just this one story, and I didn't know how to stretch my creative legs, I guess, out. We took a break, and we recorded Apotheosis, which was amazing, and I had the opportunity to work with somebody. Pay the musician. Pay and I sat together, and we wrote like a motherfucker. We wrote some great shit. I mean, storyboarded out all of season 2, and so many plot threads to lead into a season 3, and build up to this amazing ending. Fleshed out every single character, got everything together, pretty much made the blueprint for where it would go. It has been smooth sailing from there. I have known everything story-wise from there, and have had the ability to focus more on the mechanics and just running the session, making sure that the pacing is on point, perfect, and great. And we're going to hopefully get a 3rd season of Prime Defenders out there, and it's going to tie together everything we've done up until this point, and it's going to be so banger. And then after that, I've been cooking something for a while. This can be a little Reed exclusive. So I've got this world that I initially ran for a campaign with my girlfriend Cynthia and Milo, my friend. We played in an arcane-inspired world that was also inspired by Futurama, weirdly. It's very, like, somewhat traditional fantasy, but it all kind of falls into a steampunk style world, where there are, like, clockwork soldiers going around this snowy town. It's like a city on an island that is completely walled off, secluded. Oceans are frozen, no way in or out, like no way out. A closed kind of system. Above ground lives a bunch of rich people and like cool stuff, and just the average person. And below ground lives anthropomorphic. Is that the right word? Like animal people hybrids. They take care of the trash, and they take care of like all the plumbing and water systems. If you ever watched Futurama, you know what I'm talking about. I'm butchering this explanation, but it's such a cool world. And I've been building out this city entirely with hooks, with characters, with different plots, things going on, and mixing in as much D&D as I possibly can when I actually have the full world written out and we can play a campaign in it. It's gonna be pretty fucking cool.
If you had to pick a favorite story moment or scene from Prime Defenders that you were the proudest of, what would it be?
Ash as a character, and I can't even take credit for it, honestly. Ash as a character, Wavelength as a character, the elementals, those I think are my favorite things, and they just all happen by accident. Like, they just kind of fucking went that way. I love the world of Prime Defenders. I love the characters that are involved. I love how the Trickster became the main villain of season 2. And Yako, God, I cannot give him enough credit. He really pulled that together and like wrapped a motherfucking bow on it.
LaFrog's theme. Music in Prime Defenders is significant in a very different way than the other campaigns. It's mainly used in-show by the characters quite often. What comes to mind the most? Guest star Ash Winters' playlist by Yako CCM. His playlist, I think, has caused me more emotional damage than maybe anything ever, actually. His character has very close ties to music, with literally at points his powers themselves being elevated by the music he's listening to. Songs on his character playlist are used in session in a way that really just rips your heartstrings out. The song My Frame Disappearing Act is infamous for being played at the most heart-wrenching of times and is used as a musical motif for Ash himself.
Can't you try again?
I can't unsummon it.
No, can't you try to fight it again?
I don't think so. I got my time as a hero, and I wouldn't trade the time I spent with you guys for anything.
Ash?
And you guys get to stay alive, and I'm sure you can deal with whatever results in this. I mean, apologies if it doesn't go well, but it's not poetry. I'm sorry, William.
You can do this!
And I
It's
put
your
my hand
power!
over it, and and the pages start flipping faster and more aggressively than they have ever before.
You can do
and
it!
the runes
belongs to
the
you!
runes start to appear on the floor, just wider and larger, and the runes start to seep up my skin and all over my body.
Even classic emo power ballads, Sleeping with Sirens is If You Can't Hang, or Welcome to the Black Parade, which I'm so normal about, I'm so normal about, as such a feeling of like angsty youth that the characters just radiate with. It makes our heroes feel like caricatures, kind of in the best way, being a true embodiment of like teen grunge and growing up. We've all been there. We've all had a playlist with a 21 Pilot song on it. Don't pretend like you haven't. Tracks from My Hero Academia and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are often in episodes that fit his vibe perfectly. My personal favourite are the tender tracks from Life is Strange. Its strings and simple melodies guiding our heroes through their most somber moments. A key moment that stands out to me are like season 2 episodes 20 to 21, where these tracks pop up a lot.
Wait, who lose you then?
Well, my aunt and I would.
Hmm.
But she's in a rehab. We can go meet her. I should probably visit soon. I'd like her to meet you guys.
And they kind of encompass that feeling of coming of age. It's very reminiscent of stories like Perks of Being a Wallflower. While not having an OST of its own, the mix of lyrical tracks as well as video game OSTs ground PD more on reality, sitting in this weird spot between reality and insanity, where the tracks playing are more from things that our heroes would have played or watched themselves. It feels very grounded. I also found out, thanks Tyson, that tracks from Lego Marvel Avengers are used, which like is actually hilarious.
So you have obviously had a chance to DM for the show itself, and you also edit for it. How long have you been working on the show? How did you get into it?
Well, I've been working for Just Roll With It since March of 2021. Been very good. Been very awesome. I hope that I can DM again, for them. It was very fun the first time. I did talk to Bizly a little bit, seeing if I could, maybe do another session. We're working it out. There's some restructures, but I've been working the closest with Bizly in particular, obviously because I work on the Patreon campaign. I do all the Patreon stuff.
So you're like obviously very active in the community itself.
Yes.
I'm taking it that's something you enjoy. You like berating people.
It's true. I do like as I call it, bullying by vague posting about the episode. At the moment, I think outside of I guess Icarus, I am the person on the team that is the most, I guess, interactive with the community.
Yeah,
at the
I'd
moment.
say so too.
So that's why I try to talk to the community a little bit. I also just find it fun, you know, to see how people are reacting to certain stuff. You know, as somebody who is part of the creative process for the episodes, especially for like Prime Defenders,
Yeah.
you know, I am very eager to see how people react to episodes and how they will react to certain things, especially stuff that's more my personal flair, like music or sound effects.
Yeah.
You know, or even like specific edits, making the little like images at the beginning of each episode for the intros.
Thinking of Black
so-
Prime Defenders again. I have not.
It's dude, I said it on Twitter, but literally everything in that regard for like the intro, anything that's visual, it's usually literally just me.
And they
There's
are
only been,
the
I think,
silliest things
one
ever. I love them so deeply.
There's only been like one occasion where one of the boys put input for what they wanted visually, but that's it. Everything else has been just me.
The mastermind
been
behind
super fun.
Dave. I did also want to go back and touch back on Paradise Chronicles a little bit again. From what I understand, it's a world that you play as a home game as well.
Yes, you're going to start inflating my ego and like stuff here.
I can't have a chat to you, mate, without talking about Paradise Chronicles. Like, come on. So, like, do you want to talk a little bit about, like, what it was like, sort of turning a home game into something that you're actually putting out into the world? Like, the fan response?
This can turn into a whole side tangent.
Keep
It's
going.
not
Start
super-
talking.
It's not... it's not really just Roll With It related and all that
Yeah.
outside of being used in the one shot. But it's just like, it's not even like a game or anything like that. It was just a story that like I've been working on and writing, you know, since like high school, like junior year. Just making characters and all that. Because I just wanted to create characters and scenarios that I would want to see in media, you know, rather than finding media that satisfies it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of the time where like certain media doesn't like hit all the right little things that you want, and
Yeah.
so I just decided to start making characters in a world that do that. And I've been working on it for a very long time, and I've been wanting to share it to people. And when I was, you know, given the opportunity to do a one-shot for Just Roll With It, I decided to be a little bit of a, you know, self-control guy and insert my own, you know, world that I already was, you know, fitting into like a top RPG like format. And so I got to share it with not just the boys, but with the community at large.
Do you have a favorite episode that you've edited, or a favorite moment, or like specific scene that you've edited that you're really proud of?
I guess like the thing that always sticks out in my mind is that Bizly and Yako, and then like separately me, both had the same idea of using that one song.
My
as
frame
Ash's-
disappearing act?
Yeah,
Yep.
as Ash's motif, like way before I even knew what the circumstances of Ash was gonna be. I was like, this is gonna work. This is gonna be the song. And then Bizly told me like the whole plan, and I was like, oh, this is really gonna work. And then as we approached the finale for season 1, he was like, yeah, I want, like, me and Yako want this song during this. And I was like, well, I already did that.
Too bad. I've
Like
done it
that.
already. Obviously, the editing brings a lot to like the episodes themselves, and you obviously very greatly control the pacing of Prime Defenders. How do you kind of decide what parts to keep in and like what parts to like boot, especially mainly like during combat? I imagine
Oh,
combat is
yeah.
quite difficult to edit.
Yeah, because for the story stuff, I usually don't cut too much out unless
Yeah.
the boys specifically ask to cut something out, or it's like dead air / like, you know, tripping over words. Story stuff I usually don't cut. I usually try to save that. In the recent episode, story-wise, I have cut it during serious moments just to keep the tension, but that's about it. I usually don't touch anything that's very much the role-playing aspect. But for combat, I do cut a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
I cut a lot of it out. Because Mutants and Masterminds combat is a little bit of a drag sometimes, just because it's not as straight and to the point like, you know, normal D&D.
Yeah.
Mutants and Masterminds is much harder if you don't understand the rules. And so usually a lot of the time I will just cut one or both of the attacks. But yeah, I usually cut a lot of stuff in combat just to keep it fast.
The editing process for a show like this, where you get like obviously hours and hours of content to like sort of sift through. Is there like any specific style that you kind of run with, or how long does it actually take you to edit an episode like this?
You know, it's not like your traditional YouTube editing or even like film editing.
Big blue font over
It's-
every word.
Yeah, literally. No, there's not really a style. As for how long an episode takes, it really depends on how long the episode is itself. Because like most episodes usually are in between like the 2.5 to like 3.5 hours raw. I would say that like usually during the week, 15 hours maybe.
Oh, pretty
like
so
on an episode.
decent chunk of time. Decent chunk of time.
That's on the lower end. On the higher end, it could take upwards of like the 30 hours.
Ouch. If you want to promote anything you're doing, anything that you want people to go look at.
I mean, I haven't really streamed in a while, but I do that on Twitch at Tizen. Obviously, I have a Twitter at Tizen99, and then not Tizen, my alt, which I'm much more active on, and usually am interacting with the community with. And then also on that account, I talk about Paradise Chronicles and the characters in it. I'm very normal. I'm so normal
Evidently.
about my characters.
100%.
I'm so normal.
I've actually never seen someone more casual about the things they enjoy. I wouldn't be able to tell.
Casual.
Yep.
I don't spend a ludicrous amount of money on art commissions or anything like that.
I
Don't know
close
what
my
you're
eyes.
talking
I
about.
pretend I do not see it.
One thing I will do, it is have the most emotionally damaging episode as my favorite. It's a simple fact of life. That's why I have elected Prime Defenders Season 2 Episode 20 as my favorite episode. Maybe because it made me sob like a baby, but also because we got to see some of the rawest personal moments from a character ever. This episode touches on topics of substance abuse and abandonment and death, but never once does the story focus on the downfall, not the angst or the hopelessness. Instead, it tends to look at Dakota's aunt, who is currently in recovery for substance abuse, and focuses on her strength. It's the first real time we've gotten to see Grizz play out important character moments.
Look at you.
Are they taking care of you?
Yeah, honey, they're taking care of me. I'm doing much better.
I got to meet the Prime Force, and they asked the three of us to, they wanted our help. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Sounds like you're doing a lot. And that's a lot of pressure. Dakota, always the weight of the world.
Dakota is 60% bits, and yet moments like this make Dakota feel so much more than a kid. He cares, and he cares so strongly. I think Prime Defenders is this weird mix of being so based in reality and at the same time so muddled up in the massive superhero landscape that it makes PD so connected with its audience. And then kind of in, obviously, episodes like 2021 of Prime Defenders, the Dakota Aunt episodes, they're my favorite episodes of the show ever. I love them very dearly. But we kind of got to see that
So
first.
glad.
They are, oh dude, actually spine chilling, genuinely. We got to see like sort of the beginning of the actual depth that Dakota has, and I know like kind of the first chance to see a character from you get explored more deeply, etc., etc. Was there a lot of pressure to be able to finally explore a character in that way?
No pressure. I think I just gravitate towards it because I consume so much anime, and they're so slow burn.
Yeah.
And like video games are too, because they're really long. I think I'm just used to characters that tell a story in a more realistic time frame. You know, over months and stuff, over years. I don't think I have a preference anymore since I'm used to doing the mini campaigns. With Dakota, I wasn't. You know, I was prepared for a long story, so I wasn't, quick to talk about his backstory. More impactful for me than I expected. I guess whenever you play a character for multiple years, or at least for me personally, I started to develop or imagine memories of Dakota's. Like there was one of those intros where he was taking a walk with his dad.
Yeah.
And talking like as a kid and talking about, being a hero and stuff. I have memories like that I just kind of imagine sometimes, and they feel real. They still feel like, I've gone through it, I've lived it. And I think a lot of that is because, Dakota, some of the backstory, and in a lot of player characters, the backstory comes from a personal place. Whenever we got to it and we started exploring what Dakota had gone through and the person in his life that is his family that's still alive, that means so much to him, it was just, like I said, it's the first time I didn't distinguish character emotions from my own.
Mm-hmm.
They were the same, and it was all real. It's real for a lot of people. It has been real. That story, that moment particularly, or at least that scenario, because Dakota, as animated as he is, what makes him more complex than being simple is having that real life experience. And despite having it, he is the way he is. And I just think it's, I mean, I love it personally. It's what allows me to like riff off and argue with Mark, because Dakota's no spoiled brat, right? Child of bad consequence. I guess he feels like he can say these things and really mean them. It's very nice. Yeah, I think it's cathartic, really, to like get to explore a character this deeply and special.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hello, Regigas Nation. I'm back again, this time from a more mentally ill angle. This is my cave. Congratulations. You have made it halfway through the video. Let's have a little bit of a break, shall we? As previously mentioned, I ran a survey in as many fan spaces as I could get my grubby little fingers on, and I asked people a couple of questions, and I think it would be fun to run through a couple of answers, don't you? I asked people who their favourite Just Draw With It player character was. Overall, the results were overwhelmingly Gilly and Tide Strider. However, once you take out all the people who do not have Patreon or have never seen any Patreon campaigns, the answer was actually Jay. The favourite overall player character for Prime Defenders was William Wisp, and the favourite player character for Apotheosis was Rumi, followed by Rand for Blood in the Bayou. I did also ask people their favourite non-player character across all campaigns. Favourite non-player character overall was Ollie. However, again, once you take out all of the people who do not have Patreon, the answer was, no one's going to be surprised, Mark Winter's Wavelength. I do also want to just have a minute to go through some of my, I wouldn't say favourite responses, but some of the responses that intrigued me. Shout out to Patrick Bateman, whose favourite player character was Patrick Bateman. Favourite non-player character was Patrick Bateman. Favourite episode was Patrick Bateman. The reason they watched the show is Patrick Bateman, and the reason they fell in love with the show is also Patrick Bateman. I'm really glad that he has a deep emotional connection with the show, and I hope he sticks around for a long while more. I would actually really like to have a deep and meaningful and maybe a harmful word to whichever one of you fuckers, I don't know who it was, but whichever one of you fuckers decided to, who at the end, when I was like, oh, you know, fun comment, say whatever you like, they were like, yo, come check out this cool Just Roll With It edit that I made. And I'm like, you know what? That's pretty sick, alright? I am gonna check out that cool Just Roll With It edit that you made, fellow citizen, fellow fan of Just Roll With It, who I can love and trust. Rickrolled. I got rickrolled. In the year 2023. Genuinely, I have never taken more psychic damage in my fucking life. Like to shout out to like the 3 or 4 people who decided to say that their favourite non-player character was Felipe. Felipe.
Oh, you know, you're asking me what stuff I have planned. I don't have everything, but I do know what happened to him.
Ashley Tisdale.
That is mine. I should have said that.
There's a really funny bit that's going to go in here. I hope that turns out alright. Now, onto Apotheosis. Just know I am trying to be so regular and measured right now because I feel so regular and measured about just over the Apotheosis. I'm normal, I'm normal, I'm normal, I'm normal, I'm normal. Do you guys believe that I'm normal actually? In fact, I think I'm kind of normal. Apotheosis, DM'd by the wonderful Conda Fiction, is a short 14-episode contained story in D&D 5e. It's based in the world of Pram, where every new cycle, people are chosen to pretty much be the embodiment of one of the 7 gods of the world. Our story follows 3 god slayers as the home of the gods, or the celestial realm, falls, and gods are running rampant. Rumi, played by Grizzly, is a character haunted by visions, and is determined to ascend to the level of godhood, if only to make the world a better place. Thanatos, our robot, played by Bizly, is determined to fulfill his programming and take down the gods and the celestial realm. And then we have Peter Squint, played by you-know-who. He's just a regular ass, normal ass, boring ass, default ass guy. He is burdened with the Archangel of Retribution living inside of him. Apothe was not only the first finished Destroy With It campaign, but also proves, at least, I don't know, for me, that you don't exactly need hundreds of episodes to tell a meaningful and impactful story. Stuff that you can do in a handful has the same kind of impact, and I'm very normal about Apotheosis, as you can obviously tell. I think Apotheosis is easiest to look at from a theming perspective out of all of the campaigns, because it is so condensed. Also because we do have the full story, so you can kind of look at it from a storytelling perspective as well. No secret that Apotheosis is filled with religious themes and imagery. I mean, literally the whole plot of the campaign is going and killing gods, but its discussion about faith kind of really entrances me personally. The story of Apotheosis can be viewed as an extended metaphor for doubt and fluctuation in faith, or more so even finding faith in things that may not necessarily be religious, and discussion about belief and placement of power and the strength that can happen when power is placed in the hands of the people. Our 3 characters have such different perspectives on it, it obviously being faith, power, and how it should be utilized. Again, they are a group of people who define the hopeful, Rumi, the hopeless Thanatos, and the determined, Peter. This story is learning to form allyship and friendship despite their complete opposite perspectives, on again finding that light within each other in a darkened world. Rumi, I have defined as the hopeful. We are introduced to him doing what he tends to do best, telling stories, igniting hope in people. It's a reoccurring thing that we see throughout Rumi's journey as his channel of faith shifts from the people to himself, eventually to Peter. And over time, he begins to not only ignite that hope in Peter, but also believe in Peter. The two have a touching story that I will go into later down the line. I'm so normal about it. Don't even mention Angel Stone in my local vicinity, I swear to fucking god. Fun read you guess fact, I pronounced it Anglestone for an extended period of time because I am dyslexic and read Angel as Angle, so I thought it was Anglestone. But these 2 characters bounce off of each other perfectly. Peter's humanity balances Rumi's thirst for omnipotence. Rumi is shown visions of a peaceful world, and it ignites him on a journey somewhere between moral greyness and self-sacrifice. However, we as the audience see that these visions blind him. He's a character that's obsessed with balance, believing that anything is excused if it sets the world right, and through that, he himself starts to lose his humanity, becoming this bridge between the people and the very gods they're trying to slay. His character in this boundary between worlds, between the light and the dark, where Thanatos objectively is the dark and Peter's objectively the light, Rumi challenges that. almost so tries to drag both of our protagonists towards that dubious middle ground. Rumi is a character of yours we've obviously been able to see like a full story from, and probably the only character we've been able to see a full story from. Did you know what his journey was going to be when you started, or was it just a whatever happens kind of happens because of the short nature of Apotheosis?
Yes and no. Yes, because I kind of wrote Rumi to have the potential to go down a traitorish path towards the party unless the party changed them. Because of the nature of the way we play, I fully expected my character to develop and change because of the interactions with the party and what we went through, like the other characters. If that didn't happen, like if Thanatos and Rumi never came to a compromise or connected over something Peter, because they did connect over Peter, I think. And if Rumi never let down these walls and these masks for Peter, I think at the end there where, you know, Rumi could have had all this power and completely been free of consequence, removing Peter's memory and leaving Thanatos in that, you know, pocket dimension. If they hadn't changed Rumi, then that's probably what the ending would have been that I envisioned. Like, I wrote that in my backstory in my head. I was like, Rumi has a specific goal, and they're going to get this power of the gods. They're going to make the world exactly how they want it, even if it's a disillusioned reality. Like, even if it's not real peace, they're going to do it because that's, you know, not only what they think is the right thing to do presently, but it's also what the sword was kind of whispering into their ear, you know, trying to make them do. But I also said no because, you know, where Rumi actually ended up and the story that was told is not what I expected. Because I made Rumi as someone, a character that I could explore, I guess, parts of myself with. You know, it was very intentional for me to place an androgynous character, and it was very personal to do. Because of that, I didn't want to have, I wanted to keep that exploration open, like open-minded, and let them become the person they ended the story as naturally. The romance part of these two characters would have never happened if Charlie wasn't, like, I guess, in character and took that leap.
Yeah.
And I think that romance was a huge part of both, you know, the story and the character development for both those characters, especially mine.
Mm-hmm. Second super secret question for me and my crazy person. What would it have actually taken for Rumi to go down that bad ending path? I think you mentioned, like, briefly, like, if Peter didn't die, but like in that final moment where you were able to, you know, you had to choose to take those memories. What was it like? What would it have taken to go down that different route?
I think you said it because Rumi saw themselves as a god.
Yeah.
Like they were meant to be the highest being, because they could basically see the future, and because they could see it, they would make sure that everything went in a straight line, as perfect as possible. And it was all a part of their, you know, vision. It was all, you know, basically fate. They walked the thread of fate to the finish line with ease. And because it was severed, you know, and it was someone that Rumi really cared about and didn't realize how much they had, like, actually come to care about, and not in a form of, you know, this person is just part of the path that I'm taking, you know, like a side character. This person, like Peter, was actually a real person to Rumi, just because of all their interactions and stuff. And because he died, it like shattered their entire reality, or their fake reality that they had in their mind. And if that never happened, if things just went like breezy, Rumi would have just kept doing what they were doing, you know, following their plan, manipulating, and seeing their goal all the way through. It would have been very sad. Sad ending. I can still see that scene in my head, you know, of Rumi having done everything exactly as they said, and then making this perfect world, and then ending it with everything was perfect, and then the whole thing ends, and then there's nothing but white after that.
Peter, as mentioned, is that light. He is our moving force throughout the campaign. what challenges both Rumi and Thanatos. Plagued by literally the Archangel of Retribution living inside him, he serves as both temptation and inspiration to Rumi. A reminder of what he's fighting for. Literally a non-consensual symbol of uncontrollable power that Rumi secretly yearns for. For Thanatos, Peter is almost kind of the opposite. Simply a regular-ass dude. A peek into, like, normality. For a creature that is so driven by programming, having Peter, who is driven by choice alone, challenges Thanatos' motives. Peter is a starkly unmotivated character, which is funny coming from a D&D campaign, but he doesn't have any great grand goal in life apart from getting a new stick for his lizard, which he does. But that doesn't stop him from being the driving force for our group by literally just existing. It's really compelling where our characters start and end in the story. The development is more subtle than what we see in other campaigns, I think. Rumi and Thanatos are kind of more static characters, which is obviously very difficult to portray in a D&D campaign. The last thing you kind of want is static characters, but that is without Peter thrown in the mix. I find that Peter propels the rest of them. Thanatos' character is the Hopeless. He is set on a path of slaughter to eviscerate all of the gods from the celestial realm, and he doesn't wish for that path to be challenged. And for the most part, it isn't really challenged. Thanatos' character is not forced outside of his comfort zone. Rather, he's shown that there are things other than him and his goal. In a way, Thani kind of learns to have a heart over the course of the campaign.
Thanatos was a character that was very driven by his own agenda. Was it challenging to play a character that was more driven to be a kind of villain?
So Thanatos was a character that I initially wanted to be the big bad at the end. I wanted him to be irredeemable. I wanted to play a character that was just a means to an end, that saw his existence only as useful for this one thing and then done. And it was difficult because I will say I do regret not having a stronger reason for Thanatos to hate the gods. You know, I look at stories like of Kratos where he was, you know, tricked by Ares into killing his entire family, and that's why he went on a rampage against the gods. I mean, like, I don't know. All I did was get lied to one time, and I cut my fucking dad's head off. That shit is crazy, right? Like, that's a little over the top, and I wish I had come up with a better reason for him to hate the gods. And I think Condi's explanation of it, which I had no idea about, definitely brought it together a lot more and made me feel more confident in it. I definitely played him very much, here are the things I want to do. I'll say whatever I need to in the moment to justify it. I don't think I, as Thanatos, ever felt confident in explaining myself. I just didn't want to. I just wanted to do it, you know? I was in my element as Thanatos when I was sending people to hell.
The way our characters develop through Apotheosis is really interesting because it's a story of anti-heroes as opposed to the heroes that we've had on the rest of this journey. And up until the ending, it's not even totally clear what path they'll walk down. These three characters personally mean so much to me, and I think they're a perfect example of being able to reflect on yourself as a viewer and seeing yourself in the extraordinary. Even those who are posed as an anti-hero have a chance to make their own just choices, with a set of characters that not only questions the world around them, but also enhance it, study it, and learn from it, and yet do not fall into its same traps. In a world full of gods, things far more advanced than humans, the God Slayers in the end find humanity? Now onto the plot in the world. I am losing my fucking mind. Apothe's world, despite which, you know, only being explored for a short while, I feel is personally just so full of life. Its environment and aesthetic define the very themes of Apotheosis itself, finding light in the dark, finding faith in the unfaithful, and finding hope in the hopeless. The stark contrast between its three main locations, Pram, pre-fall with its light, a world full of hope but oppression, post-fall with its celestial realm, in which the sky falls, the sun no longer rises and the stars no longer shine, with its darkness, stripped of its hope and helpless, and the celestial realm at the end, in which hope is fought for. These locations visually mirror the 3 acts of Apotheosis themselves. The story is run in sets of 2 episodes, one mainly RP-based episode and the next a combat episode. Our characters are slowly working their way from god to god, killing them and bickering between them about their conflicting goals. Each episode opens with a monologue from our wonderful Dungeon Master Felipe Section, leaving players and viewers with a thought to consider thematically and emotionally throughout the rest of the episode.
In a world that has lost everything, one must cherish that of which they still have. The small things in life that keep us sane in the face of despair. For what are we if not human? And what would we become without that which gives us hope?
Each of these 2 episode bursts of story is again split within the god they are fighting. Each of the 7 gods focus on an idea. The blight of strength, courage, charisma, dignity, wisdom, compassion, and faith. As the players journey from god to god, they deal with the theme of that god. Plot directly encourages character growth at a rapid rate. It's more kind of like on the nose moments of theming work in the shorter nature of the show, I find, to actually push the players to a goal. The world of Pram feels so vast compared to what we see in game. Its magical and religious system leaving much to the imagination. We are introduced to the concept of Luddite, a small rock which fell from the celestial realm when it collapsed, that contains the power of the gods itself. While not being used often in the actual campaign itself, the idea of it makes me actually go batshit crazy. Its utilization at the end of the show in its season finale, in its final episode, after the characters have accepted the world as more important than them, their own moral compass and desires, but they settle for a world inspired by them as opposed to a world of their making. Peter and Narumi choose to give the Luddite and its power back to the people, a symbol of finding strength in yourself and community first and foremost.
I don't know, Peter, what do you think?
Why don't we go back down there? Why don't we clean up whatever mess we made? And then we can start cleaning up theirs. And after talking to people, after seeing what's happened, maybe then we can decide. With the help of everyone.
I have not been subtle about my deep desire to know everything about the world of Apotheosis, but what information I do have, oh my god, makes it such a compelling setting. A classic fantasy D&D world till you take a step back and really assess it again, in which you find something more complex, a world designed to test morality and faith, a story that forces the hopeless to hope and the weak to find strength not in the world, but in themselves. Can you tell? I know you've been pretty vocal about Apotheosis being a source of great, like, stress and also, like, pride for you at, like, the same time while you were, like, writing it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about, like, the experience of writing Apotheosis?
So, Apotheosis, I think it was really hard for me, especially because, like, even back then, up until even current day, you know, I've been kind of just in a little bit of a creative rut. So I went into a lot of it unsure about both, like, myself and, like, my creative ability in it, and just generally, like, how things are going to go or where they were going to go. And it was scary. It was terrifying, because there is that looming presence over you that is just, you know, this some odd couple thousand, tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
It was a Patreon campaign, thankfully, so it was only like a couple thousand people, but it's still like a big pressure. And not just that, you also want to make sure that your players are having fun, and that's kind of like where the big priority is, at least for me, was to, like, make sure that they had a fun and cool experience. You know, they talk about it fondly, so I think I did well with that, at least. Writing for it was tough. I have just awful ADHD, so it just becomes hard. And then there was the one episode we recorded in Just Roll With It week, when we had the big setup for the Riptide, and we only got one episode of Apotheosis done that day, or that week, for a multitude of reasons. One of them being that I got sick on day 2, which kind of sucked. That, and if you're wondering why Monster Control Surface exists, it's because I got sick on day 2, and I could not do anything. There was that point there where I had to basically try to write more than one episode, like with a day between the episode recordings, essentially. So we got the one episode recorded, and then I think it was episode 13 that recorded again after that, and I was so unprepared, and I went into it, and I kind of played things the way I thought would be cool, which was actually like the way the episode was originally supposed to go. The gods were basically going to beat the fuck out of them and like knock them out, which is already a bad idea. You should never have a battle planned that your characters are like supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And if they don't lose, then you're fucked, you know, like for your story. That was just a really awful idea. So like it was going like that, and I was fucking killing them basically. And I kind of looked at across their faces, and they seemed like just kind of not like they were enjoying it. So I basically was like, okay, we should scrap this episode and redo it, because I'm not feeling great about how it's going. So I think just like that kind of pressure of like the turnaround time can sometimes be a little, it's just big. It's big.
Yeah.
And I would keep that in mind a lot if you're listening to stuff like Apotheosis or anything during Just Roll With It week, is that we're doing an episode a day or sometimes even more, and we have to prepare an entire D&D episode in a day.
Yeah, let alone record it.
or more.
Dude, I don't know how you do it. I
Yeah.
sit for like 1 3-hour D&D session and I'm like, it's time for bed. I'm tucking out. Like, I'm done here.
Yeah. Charlie is insane because with the suckening, we were in the basement we arrived at his house at 10:30. We started recording at 12. We would record until 8 o'clock. We'd have an hour break somewhere in there. So we'd have 7 hours per day, basically. So basically every single day, Charlie came in with a full 7-hour session planned out and ready for us to play through. So his entire life for that week was just about this vampire campaign we were running. It is bonkers. We probably shouldn't do it. Really unhealthy.
Did he
But we
sleep?
do it anyways.
Did any of you sleep? Jesus Christ.
The way it's been described before is it's like you're awake in this red room that we're recording in. Don't know if you saw that, but
yeah.
we were in a red room covered in blankets. And then you go back to the B&B and fall asleep, but in reality, you're still in the red room, and you wake up in the red room, and everything's just the red room. There's no escape.
You can't escape. You can't escape.
Charlie said several times, he was like, man, I know I should be like sleeping and stuff, but I wake up at like 3 a.m. I'm like, oh my god, what if this happens in the episode tomorrow? And then he starts writing. Like, it is crazy.
Obviously, the world is something we only really got to see like the surface of due to like, you know, sort of the condensed nature of the campaign. Did you have like a lot else written, or is like that something you'd like to explore more, or if given the chance to explore it more, would you?
So, yes to basically all of that. Yes. Have been really bouncing around. This kind of comes back to the whole ADHD, bad at sitting down and writing thing, but I've really been trying to think about like trying to sit down and write a novella, like maybe either a prequel or a sequel to Apotheosis. I'm thinking prequel, and maybe have it like be in one of the shoes of one of the chosen, basically like, you know, who they were and like who everybody else was, and just kind of give some insight into the world itself. Mind you, I've nothing written for that or any of the world stuff really in my mind anymore, because I'll be so real with you, my DMing style is so fast and loose that most of it did not end up in like a document or on paper or anything. I just had it in my brain. But I have really wanted to go back and try to do something at some point, because I really do love the world. I think there's a lot of cool stuff I could do with the world. And I think we do, and I know it's been talked about a lot, but I think we do plan on going back at some point and doing the alternate ending thing. We just haven't really had a chance. Yeah. I've been actually more focused on trying to write this murder mystery campaign that I'm going to be running in August.
Oh.
I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if I'm going to write a good murder mystery. It might just be a mess. But,
it's the thought that counts, right?
That's exactly. You know, maybe they'll be like, oh, yeah, murder, that guy did it. And I was like, how'd you know?
Listen, there will be a murder and there will be a mystery.
There's this name tag.
Yeah. In that case, then, would you have a favorite certified just roll with it moment? Like a favorite bit, a favorite scene, fan interaction, community, etc. Literally anything. I know I'm asking the crazy ones.
My favorite moment that will always stick out to me is episode 53. Yeah. Second favorite or another favorite moment is obviously going to be like episode 13 part 1 and 2 for Apotheosis, because like that whole sequence is really cool of Peter killing Exandroth and then Rumi.
It's so
bringing
sick.
him back.
Out of curiosity then, was the sword Peter Exandroth thing you, or was that like Charlie's idea?
That was me. So what happened is the day we were going to record episode 13, I wake up in the morning extra early because I had to prepare.
Yep.
Really terrible mistake. And then about an hour and a half before the session was supposed to start, I was like, oh shit. And I DM'd Charlie. I was like, hey, you want to run a little session, just me and you quickly? And we spent like, I don't know how long the episode was, but we spent however long just running this kind of combat. So it was like a very last minute kind of idea. It could have just been like the roomy side of things and gone from there. And I think that would have changed kind of the whole trajectory of the story if Xandroth was alive at the very end.
I think so, yeah.
Very last minute thinking. And it worked out great. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy that I came up with the idea, like, hey, let's fight Xandroth in the sword. And I hear from Charlie all the time. It's like, you know, that's like the first time he's ever done like a full character arc, basically. Like that was his character arc. He finished it there when he killed Xandroth. And he's like, that felt really cool, dude. And you know, it's just nice to hear.
But I'd say in that regard, because also, like, you were the guy to finish the first Just Roll With It campaign. That's pretty crazy. Firstly, I hope you're proud of that. But secondly, like, it speak to that experience at all? Like, being able to give...
A little bit.
Yeah, like, give all the players that character arc.
It was cool to do. I think going into it, I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to give them the kind of, like, a closure that they wanted or needed for the characters. I think with Thanatos especially, I was a little worried about it. But he kind of handled his own thing. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna sit in this room for the rest of eternity. Yeah. And same with Rumi, honestly. Rumi, I think like a lot of Apotheosis is the way it is because of how those three play together and how those characters kind of interacted with each other. I think that's like a lot of what made it great as well. Like, I can't even take full credit for it because I think they did such an amazing job through just literally all of it that it just came together to just tell this really wonderful story, in my opinion. I'm just proud of everybody as a group for that whole thing because it definitely was not all me. I just kind of set the stage and they took everything and ran with it. But it felt good. It felt great, you know, being the guy behind the scene of like,
yeah.
That was like partially the movie.
Yeah. And then the music. God, everyone who chose the music. Tyson, Condi, just God bless. I have never felt music enhance a world so much, and I am dead serious about that. On This Day by Ryo, I don't quite know how it's said, was actually my top track of last year. I listened to it over 300 times. It's my favorite track that they personally used in the show, as they use it through some of my favorite scenes personally. Any tender scene between Rumi and Peter.
What do you plan to do against Suin? And after?
Well... I don't really have a plan. I think that's okay.
I highly encourage everyone, even if you never finished Apotheosis, to go and sit and go to the Apotheosis episode 14 titled Apotheosis. Go to about, I think it's like 23 minutes in, something like that, and there is a speech between Rumi and Peter, and on the background of this speech, On This Day plays, and it's just magical. It's just magical. I've got shivers thinking about it. Oh my god, it was even down to just the choice of the title, Apotheosis. Somehow the players took this word, this prompt, whether it be a possibility or the threat of apotheosis, and weaved a story about growth, hope, righteousness, pure-heartedness, love, and faith. I'm gonna kind of keep the rest of this video a little bit more condensed. The next group of campaigns have limited episodes, so I'm gonna talk about them kind of briefly. Blood in the Bayou is the most recent mini-campaign based in 1980s Galloway in some vague semblance of Louisiana. It follows three regular-ass dudes as they all return to their hometown to finish a long-abandoned D&D campaign. Charlie Slime's Cool is taking another punt at DMing for the first time in almost 2 years. Blood in the Bayou, at a Patreon vote, is in the Call of Cthulhu system and is ran for 4 episodes. It was also the first campaign to have a completely original soundtrack. Blood in the Bayou is a story about entrapment. Most of all, we follow our 3 main characters as they have to return back to their hometown. or in the case of Rand, confront how much life has kind of continued on without him. Blood in the Bayou is a mystery and horror story first and foremost, which is a bit different from everything else we've had so far, with its looming soundtrack and unsure world building attention throughout the short story. Horror stories in this format are so brain go crazy interesting to me, because it's completely up to luck and player intuition if the story gets told or if they even survive. Especially since the story is so short, there's a finite amount of time for things to be revealed. For a story like this, it's in these reveals where it shines. Intense moments where the town of Galloway is implied to be a hive mind, an elder brain, and then later revealed to actually be a hive of bugs, where our entire cast and audience are led down a stray path, or when our leads are locked in a basement, fighting against time to get the answers that they need. These moments where roleplay gets to shine is what makes Blood in the Bayou stand out so much. Don't get me wrong, Blood in the Bayou, for as short as it is, has a cult following. People ate this shit up, bruh. Its production value was so incredibly high that it was, like, difficult to ignore it. Over the course of the story, the town of Galloway is taken over slowly by bugs. However, the reveal doesn't come until 3 or 4 episodes in. The rest of the story is pure tension, learning why our 3 main characters had a falling out and why they're struggling to reconnect. Kian Stone, played by Grizzle Dizzle, is a famous rock star who ran off to Hollywood to kickstart his music career. With hit songs like Smoke with the Devil and Becky, he can't escape that rock and roll kind of mindset, failing to take literally the end of the world seriously. He came back also in part to reunite with his lost love, Becky, who inevitably is his crux and downfall. Kian is immature on the long and short of it. He's a character that is charismatic to a fault, living off of a whim and a little bit too much dedicated to the bit, which, in my opinion, isn't possible. Always dedicate yourself to the bit, kings. He should also have a charge of public indecency, but whatever, I don't know, it's fine. His sense of entrapment is revealed at the tail end of the show, when he is transformed into a gulp bug, now physically trapped in Galloway, but also when he drops the bombshell that he never made it in Hollywood. He was a phony, trapped in a lie. It's interesting, I find, that the one place he's trying to escape is the place where he is confronted with the truth. He is so drunk on stardom that he falls for the traps of his ex in his hometown. Almost in direct contrast to Kian, Roland is unsure and self-contained, independent in the way that the other two tend to conflict with. We learn that he and Rand used to be buddy-buddy, but fell out when Roland left to go and become a lawyer. Where Kian was running towards something when he left Galloway, Roland was only running away from Galloway itself. I think Roland is one of Condi's best characters to date. For such a short story, all of Roland's conflicts feel thoroughly explored. He's returning to Galloway to attend his parents' funeral, and through the course of these 4 episodes, we see him grieve his family, confront his friends, and also, become a bug. There's a common bug theme going on here. He gets a lot of solo time in the story and really shines as Condi gets these long emotional speeches that literally... I need a moment. Roland's level-headed character in a story like this where the real world shifts far away from normality, pushing the story along as he, out of everyone, is most desperate to escape. It's funny then, how he is the only one that never truly can. Rand, in a sense, feels very main character, mainly because he knows the town of Galloway best. He has all of these pre-established relationships to local characters and is a source of knowledge for the players. Despite his whole character literally being useless school dropout 420 blazer pothead, his main conflict is the fact that he never quite moved on from the death of his sister, in a sense blaming himself, and despite living at home until his late 20s, early 30s, feeling disconnected from the rest of his family. Rand doesn't necessarily try to hide his sense of betrayal from his friends as they left him to rot in Galloway. In any sense, despite the ending of Blood in the Bayou being kind of ambiguous at best, he seems like the only character to seamlessly have any positive outcome. Being able to uncover the mysteries of Galloway are the first time that Rand's ever really felt of use. At the end of the show, it's revealed that the Queen of the Hive takes the form of Rand's sister, and he is, one way or another, reunited with her. Whether they are now both free from Galloway literally or in death, no one exactly wins. We don't go on a journey with these characters to overcome hardship or develop the character, but rather to reveal all of their downfalls. It's almost hopeless. The characters can't win. They're not supposed to. Before I wrap up the Blood in the Bayou section, I do want to touch base on the soundtrack. Nathan Hanover strikes again with our first OST, consisting of 37 tracks. The man literally went crazy. The soundtrack mirrors the intensity of the show, with tracks like Runaway heightening arguably some of the most adrenaline-pumping moments. Its title track and its various reprises do not fail to get you well and truly hyped up for every episode, and encompasses that very famous 5 Scooby-Doo feel. Words can't describe the Metamorphosis version of the title track. The first time I heard that, I think I screamed out loud and also got chills down my spine. Tracks like Coming Home, A Forgotten Promise, and A Melody Better Left Unknown, and its inverse, are definitive tracks for me, and literally go so much harder than they have absolutely any right to. Having an OST like this means that I can do my favorite thing ever, consume the media, obsess over the soundtrack for like 6 months, and then rewatch the media and have a completely elevated experience because of now how I understand the music on an atomic level.
So Nathan, you've worked on both the Blood in the Bayou OST and the Riptide OST. Do you have a favourite of the two and or a favourite track? I enjoyed working on Riptide more than Blood in the Bayou, but I do enjoy Blood in the Bayou's sound more. The atmosphere and mixture of organic ambience and 80s synthesizers along with southern instruments such as jaw harps was really pleasing to work with. I'd be torn between Horrors in the Bayou and Wandering Around Galloway, but I feel Entomophobia is my favourite track. I really went all out on this track and tried to make it as chaotic as possible, which I think I succeeded in doing, only to raise the bar on its counterpart. You will be replaced. 2 OSTs have very different vibes to them, obviously. How did it compare writing the more moody, scenic tracks of Blood in the Bayou to then whipping out the guitar riffs for Riptide? Was one easier than the other? I've always prided myself on my ability to allow the style and tone of the project to come first. There are several composers out there in film, games, etc. that have one sound that you can tell is them from a glance, and while I do have my own particular sound, I like to weave that into the requirements of the project. I enjoy when listeners are surprised to learn I worked on a project. It makes me feel I succeeded in allowing the project to dictate the sound and genre, not my style heavy-handedly injecting into the project. I feel the melody scenes of Blood in the Bayou to be a lot of fun and building the tension along with the audio. I had the isolated podcast to write towards, which allowed me to build synergy between the music and the Dungeon Master in the audio. Blood in the Bayou was fun to experiment, but a harder project due to the heavy time constraints. While Riptide is extremely fun to explore different tonal avenues with new chord progressions and modulations, giving a very early orchestral jazz feel to some of the pieces in their progression, though when it's time to bring out the guitars, the solo writing is my favourite. Since my origin started as band work, I like to utilise that energetic feeling of listening to a fantastic piece, only to hear an amazing solo line enter the mix. When I used to play in bars, the solo was always my desired part of the night, and most likely where the seeds of composition came from, writing new lines on the fly and developing them. For the Blood in the Bayou OST, I'm curious about how you begin projects like that, especially since it's a more condensed show as opposed to something like Riptide. Are you given a prompt, like write a song for sneaking, or are you more so given scenes to write for? Blood in the Bayou was very fun for me as it was a different medium, almost like scoring to film but without the film. For the project I was given a rough audio draft of each of the episodes along with a timestamp of important scenes that'll need music, and from there, like scoring to film, I'd score to the audio for a time-stamped scene. For episodes 2 and 3, due to heavy time constraints, I had to move away from scoring to the audio to creating looped pieces underneath the time-stamped area for the editor to then slot in and dramatically swap between the different parts as they saw fit. Most tracks, like The Queen, were in several parts. Most had a pre- and a post version, but The Queen was unique to have a third section for the editor to swap to. These parts were created like I would a video game. Are there any silly secret motifs throughout the tracks or little ditties that you're particularly attached to or proud of? I'm just generally curious. I'm also just curious, but was A Melody Left Unknown and its inverse track with the backwards title you, or was that something that came from Charlie? Because that literally blew my mind when I first saw it. This is an interesting question, because there are, but I'm currently doing a big brain moment with Riptide where there is a motif that does show up in a few of the tracks, even in the main theme, but the character has yet to have a theme written for them, though I am setting it up.
So once the character does get a theme and the motifs are used, I can tie it all back. I'm terrible at naming tracks, which I feel is ironic since I write pieces that need a name, so usually I like to brainstorm with the creator for whatever project I'm working on to create the track titles. A melody better left unknown, and A Melody I've Always Known was Charlie's idea, but its backwards title, in verse, was mine. I know you're working on Volume 2 for the Riptide OST and Gen Loss. What's next for you on and off the show? Feel free to shameless promo if you want. Currently it's up in the air. I've got Riptide and other Just Roll With It ventures as long-term projects, and hopefully more Gen Loss stuff down the line, but also have the Dial Town Phone Dating Sim DLC on the back burner along with Super Dark Deception. But other than these projects, which are all on and off, I'm currently winging it. And now we take a little section to hop over to Convergence. Now, I won't speak much on Convergence itself, at least not as in-depth as I have like the other campaigns so far. I instead kind of want to look at more so the campaign as a whole, and like what it did for the show. Convergence was a short set of episodes live streamed after the end of the second arc of the It was the first time the reins of DMing had been handed over to Mr. Slimesicle, and there are currently 5 public episodes, and 2 lost episodes that were live streamed but have since been eaten by the computer. This was also the first time Just Roll With It episodes had ever been live streamed on Twitch. That combined with someone's tendency, I'm looking at you, Charlie, to run fairly long sessions means that these episodes were, not very short. Now, unfortunately, I have not caught any of the streams myself. It was like a period where I wasn't really listening to the show, but down the grapevine, I've heard that they were an absolute blast to be a part of. Cast of Convergence. Flynn Gustwind. Crowwise. Gone but not forgotten. Characters like Alcacross and Casper have appeared in PD and Riptide respectfully as their own kind of separate characters, and may even get a reboot one day. Now the story was more world of the week kind of thing, where our heroes would travel from world to world, or more so dimension to dimension, in order to save the world from some mysterious black world-eating goo. You know, easy. Simple. Convergence 2 was, I would argue, a shifting point in the show, where it began to level up well and truly. We had an influx of art, new artists for thumbnails, new logos, banners, a transformation almost. Bigger budget, bigger production. But our cast got to make serious characters for the first time in 3 years. Characters like Flynn and Alistair feel fleshed out despite the short time we spent with them. And I think the reoccurring significance of convergent characters in current campaigns really just proves that their story was not meant to sit idle for so long. I cannot wait to see where Convergence ends up, whether it gets rebooted or ends up dead in a ditch. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, there was the period where you did have to reboot the show. Was there anything that like specifically kept you going? Like, why did you want to stick around and reboot it?
What really made me want to keep going was, everybody else really, because we were talking about it, we were looking at each other, you know, like Weedy was like, you know, I'm not going to keep going.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've got to focus on my job, do my thing. And we're like, okay, that's fair. So it was just the 4 of us. And Charlie and Bizly just kind of came at us with this cracked out like whole plan. They're like, okay, we're gonna do 2 campaigns. Actually, it was 3 campaigns at the beginning. We're gonna do 3 different campaigns, 2 of them on Patreon, 1 public, and we're gonna go fucking crazy. You know, this isn't gonna just be like, oh yeah, we're back. It's gonna be, oh, we're so fucking back kind of thing. You know, if we're gonna keep on doing this, we're gonna do it crazy. And it was just kind of like a gambit that really worked out, because the show kind of exploded from there, which was crazy.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite certified Just Roll With It moment, like a favorite moment you've played out, or like a fan interaction, or just community moment, something that sticks out to you personally?
I love fan interactions. I think Bizly's met a fan at like a theater or something.
I saw that.
Once.
Yeah.
But I've gone to cons. I've met 4, I'm gonna say 3 groups. No. Yeah. 3 groups of community members who were, and they were all in cosplay too. So it's like even better. And they're all, and it was Dakota, it was Prime Defenders cosplays.
Yes.
2 of them were Dakota Cole. So fucking awesome. That every time that happens to me, where I get to like see someone who's a fan and that much of a fan to want to like portray the character in cosplay, those are like the best moments by far. Especially because everyone's so much nicer than I like would expect. I'm so bad at socializing in person.
Understandable.
So I have a story. I have a really good one to share. Well, I went to Fanime a few weeks ago. We were leaving the convention really late, and I saw somebody with red hair and like a little flannel around their waist, and I was like, there's no way that that's a Dakota cosplayer, like in the wild. And she ran off because I was like, no, we'll just leave it. I'm sure it's some other anime character. She's like, no, I have to know. So she ran off and chased this person down like 90 feet down the hall. She like ran after them and then stopped them, and I hid behind a pillar, and I was like, oh my god. And then sure enough, it was the Dakota Coldpot cosplayer, and it was hype. But I was like really fucking shy about it. I was like, oh my god, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I never thought this would happen to me. That was recently, but back at TwitchCon, there was a Dakota Cole cosplayer that like waited like 10 million years to see.
I remember seeing that in like
me and Lumi.
the Grizzcord and stuff. I think
It was
going
like
down.
it was a saga, and it was so enjoyable too. And they recently dressed up like that for VidCon as well with someone else.
I saw that the Rumi
I was
cosplay.
like,
Yeah, goes insane.
yeah, running the show and doing dungeon mastering and stuff is difficult on me as a person, but when just getting to meet people who like have been affected, I guess, it clearly means a lot to a lot of people. Yeah. Have tattoos of my character's sword and of Gillian's sword.
I'm a casual fan. I don't really care about the show that much. No, like
I don't even have a shoulder tattoo.
No, but like on a kind of more personal note, like obviously the show does mean a lot to a lot of people. It's awesome to be able to watch it grow. It really is. If it's not evident as like my entire existence, that it's something pretty sick and pretty important. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, because it's those experiences and like this kind of stuff that helps me keep in mind that what we do it's small, smaller compared to some shows, but it's big enough to where it's bigger than us.
Yeah.
And even if it's hard, it's so worth continuing to do. And stuff like this, like meeting you and seeing your videos on the show and meeting people in person.
Yeah.
Are they affect my life too. Like I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Like for as long as I live, it'll always be worth it because of that.
Okay, harder question. What is your favorite certified Just Roll With It moment? Either like a favorite moment you've played out, a scene, a character, something that sticks with you, community moment, fan interaction, literally anything.
I think my favorite Just Roll With It moment just so happens to coincide with my least favorite Just Roll With It moment. In where we had, long story short, pretty much lost everything with the show, and we were at such a low point, all of us together, and we all came together, pushed through that together, and turned it into something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life, that's changed my life, that's changed my perspective, that's given me opportunities I have only ever dreamed of, and I guess shown me that you can really push through anything as long as you've got the heart to do it, and definitely brought me closer with my friends. It was just one of those moments where it felt like we had to do this. We were meant to do this. Make or break, go for it. And we did, and it was kind of fucking awesome.
Now we get to the Fated. Similar to Convergence, I won't talk for too long or in too much detail. Rather, I just want to talk about the significance of this campaign. This is a story that will always kind of sit very near and dear to my heart. It's how I found the show, and it played a large part in my formative teenage years. Despite it maybe not aging the best, it's one of those things that runs a lot on nostalgia for me, holding a place in my heart because of the time that me and many others spent with it. It's really hard to let it go. Compared to the rest of the show, the Fated is a very traditional D&D campaign, based mostly in a canon-compliant 5e high fantasy world. We follow the Fated Five, a party of novice adventurers as they are thrust together by chance, eventually entering on a journey to save the world. This story remains unfinished. It doesn't take away the beauty of these characters. Looking back now, it feels a lot more novice. Obviously, 5 years is a long time for players to grow in character creation and story, but the Fated will always feel warm to me. The Fated tell stories about companionship, characters being forced to face their past in order to move on with their lives. Our party's a bit larger this time, with brothers Brad and Sylvan Vengalore played by Charlie and Condi, Tax the Tabaxi, a Grizzly character, Mountain, a Bizly character, and local girl boss Valrissa played by Triple McWeedy, who unfortunately is no longer with the show. And despite not getting to explore the story and all these characters in its entirety, we still got to see them grow for 3 whole years. This story feels very different from what we currently have. The Faded is what it feels like to run a game of D&D at home. It has those combat sessions that last for 4 hours, and if I'm honest, just like an excessive amount of taverns, like so many taverns. There's no need to have that many taverns. Its length too, I think, plays into the nostalgic feeling. It was less curated. Riptide is ran like it's been written for a show, obviously, which it is. It's got such character and personality. It's consumable, and feels like every episode distinctly has a point and purpose in the story. That's not to say The Faded didn't have that, nor that one was better than the other for it, but The Faded felt like you were watching a casual table. Some episodes completely void of plot and others nothing but lore dumps with a BBEG. I think that's why so many fell in love with it and have that shared struggle of letting it go. It's nostalgia. If you're along for the journey, you were there for the whole journey. Literally through thick and thin. That's kind of why I've made this video in a sense, because of that thick and thin. The show has been going for 5 years strong, and it's evident how far it's grown. From those very first Faded episodes with only audio and unsure characters, to here, now, where we've all seen some of the most amazing performances in D&D podcast history. No, I am not biased at all. And finally, after all this time, to see the start and end of stories that they've been trying to get out for the past 5 years. People who have been here since day one, and some who literally discovered the show last week. All of it comes together to make something really quite special. A show like literally no other that captivated me so long ago and just kept on getting better and better. Thank you, Just Roll With It, for The Faded, for the stories that remain unfinished, for the stories that you choose to share with us anyway, and most of all, thank you for just rolling with it.